As the first family in Washington, the manor built by the Livingston family is naturally magnificent. In the mountains not far from the city, you could see a magnificent manor building halfway up the mountain. The scale is very huge. According to Harvey, this manor covers an area several hundred miles, which almost encloses several hills. There are not only living quarters, but also private zoos. There are many rare animals in it. It's a luxury. In addition to Randy's one visit, all others returned for the first time. Even Harvey's girlfriend, Carol, was led to the door for the first time. Wow, Harvey, your family is much better than mine. It's so big, Millie said with admiration. A few people came to the entrance of the manor at the foot of the mountain. The gate here was magnificent. The wall stretches out of sight from here, and you can't see the end at a glance. Harvey replied with a smile. My family is not big. The manor that Harry is building is bigger. Millie asked, Really, Harry, where was your manor? It's on the island next to Moon Island because it's under construction. You didn't see it last time you were there, Harry said. The subsidiary island beside Moon Island, called Allen Island, is now Harry's personal property, although it is very small compared with the main island of Moon Island. But overall, the area is thousands of miles, so he said modestly that his home is nothing. But it's not just about the area. The decoration on your side is really ingenious. I guess it took a lot of effort to design it, Millie said again. Coming in front of the main entrance, people drove up the mountain. Along the way, there were all kinds of valuable green plants beside the road because Washington is located in the south. The environment is warm and humid all year round, so when you looked around, it is full of all kinds of flowers in full bloom. A burst of fog comes just like being in a fairyland on Earth. Harvey's father should have received the news early in the morning. When they arrived at the square in front of the manor, the old man came out to meet them. Harvey's father is called Sean Livingston. He is over 60 years old. He worked hard all his life to form the Livingston family of his. It was not until he was more than 40 years old that Harvey had such an only son. It's so amazing to have Harvey as a baby, but usually the children spoiled by such rich families are not very successful. Harvey is an exception. Although he has no great achievements now, he is not the kind of loser dandy. Sean Livingston doesn't have high expectations as long as Harvey can keep his family property. But unexpectedly, Sean Livingston never thought that his son had a relationship with the Parker family's heirs. Sean Livingston, who was preparing to meet Harry with the housekeeper outside, is a little nervous now. I don't know what Mr. Parker's character is. You think we will neglect him if we don't go to the airport to meet him? Seeing the uneasiness in his master's heart, the housekeeper said, Master, I don't think so. The sir and their relationship is very good now. Since their young people can get along with each other, they should be very good. Also, the friends Harvey has made are not so rude and unreasonable. I'm quite relieved about that. John Livingston nodded. Yes, the car ahead should be them, the housekeeper warned. Far away, Harry saw an old man standing in the square who seemed to be waiting for someone. After Harvey stopped, he said, Harry, that's my father. He's greeting you. Harry said, Why didn't you say that earlier? How can you let the elder come out to meet the younger? Then he quickly pushed the door and got off. Harvey also quickly followed up, went to his father, and said, Dad, this is what I often say about Mr. Parker. John Livingston nodded his head when he looked at him a little. He was worthy of being a member of the Parker family. His appearance and temperament are not too much. Then he laughed and said, Mr. Parker, it's a slight that I didn't get to go to the airport to meet you. Harry said, Uncle, you're too polite. I'm of the same generation as Harvey. You can't call me Mr. Parker. It seems that I'm too outsider. Just call me Harry. As soon as these words were finished, John Livingston's eyes lit up. Before that, he was afraid that Harry would be too domineering of his family background. Unexpectedly, he was a modest and polite young man. Oh, good. The wind outside mostly comes into the room to talk. John Livingston said 3 good things and called the people to walk towards the main building of the manor. Sean Livingston is busy these days because of his birthday. Many friends from afar have to be received by him. Those who are close to each other will, of course, stay in the manor, while those who are far away will be entertained in the hotel in the city. Until tomorrow when the birthday party is held, and then pick up all the people to head to the party in order to please the Livingston family. Of course, smaller families can't miss this opportunity. The Livingston family has a very high position in the entertainment circle, so no matter if it's a big star or a director or producer, they all want to come and make up for each other. As long as you can make friends with Mr. Livingston, you can go far in the entertainment circle. However, not everyone can come to the birthday party of the Livingston family. It's more difficult to get the invitation than to get the Met Gala. As a singer, Kiss Holiday has been in the low tide of her career recently. She wants to save her career by making movies, but the film shooting cycle takes too long. Once the stars and idols have not been exposed for a long time, their fame will drop like a rock. She can't climb up to the big families, but many big men in the circle come to the birthday party. As long as she can hold one of them by the thigh, it's enough. Her previous benefactor, Lester, had been crushed by Harry many times. In order to get an entrance ticket to the birthday party, Kiss Holiday did her best. After several days of waiting on a high-level member of Harvey's family, she successfully got a peripheral invitation. With this invitation, Kiss Holiday was just like a treasure. Before the time arrived, she came to Washington one day ahead of time and stayed in a hotel in the city. Along with her Nathan, her current play toy, with an invitation she could bring a person into the hall. Kiss, what's the origin of this family? I think the hotel we live in is full of people from the entertainment circle. Are they all coming to the old man's birthday party? In the room, Nathan, who had just been in the shower, inquired. Kiss Holiday is not very satisfied with Nathan. He was handsome enough, but as a lover, he was a little boring. However, after hearing Nathan's inquiry, Kiss Holiday answered lazily. The Livingston family in this entertainment circle, it can be said that they occupy half of the country. Even many big men in the circle have to go to Mr. Livingston for opportunities. Nathan was shocked and said, He's so powerful. Well, why didn't I know that before? Kiss Holiday sniffed. Do you think you're in high position now? Where is this? In the entertainment industry, you can't see people who actually run the show. Many of them are hidden behind the scenes. You have to promise to behave for me tomorrow. Don't offend anyone you shouldn't offend. Yes, I promise to be on my best behavior. Kiss Holiday glanced at Nathan, feeling that it might be a mistake to bring him here. This guy is not a person of duty. What she likes the most is to play with him by relying on her charming appearance. Because of many previous convictions, Kiss Holiday is really worried about this meeting and solemnly instructs Nathan. Most of the people who come to the birthday party tomorrow are big men in the entertainment industry, and they will also show off many young girls who have just started their careers as arm candies. If Nathan doesn't open his eyes and offends anyone who he shouldn't, then he won't have much luck in the entertainment industry. In the Livingston family's manner, after Harry and Sean Livingston talked for a while, Harvey's girlfriend was very embarrassed, and Sean Livingston also gave her a lot of advice from time to time. Harry knew that this was the first time his daughter-in-law would come to the door. The old man was a little upset. I don't want to disturb them. They must have a lot to talk about. Harry found an excuse to leave and said, Uncle, your manor is built to my liking. It happens that I have a manor under construction too. Do you mind if I stroll around and study the layout? Sean said, Where will it be? Mr. Parker, you can look at it casually. There are no restrictions for you here. Fuller, can you be a guide for Mr. Parker and take him to stroll around the manor? Yes, sir. Harry nodded at Harvey and led Randy out. Harvey is very understanding, also smiles, and then has to deal with his father's interview for his girlfriend. After leaving the reception hall, Millie, who had not spoken for a long time, said, Harold seems to be a child of an ordinary family. You say that if she and Harvey really get married, would Sean agree with her? Randy looked at the housekeeper, who pretended to be deaf and dumb, and then said, What's the matter? Harvey has made up his mind early. He will marry in the future. If Sean doesn't agree, he will leave his family business and elope. After listening to Randy's words, the housekeeper who led the way could not help it at last. The housekeeper then turned and shook his head and said, Sir, what you said is too much. My master is very open-minded. As long as there is no shortcomings in the girl's character and life experience, we don't care about Harvey's marriage. Millie was surprised and said, In this way, Harvey and Carol can succeed. I thought they could be lovers at most. The housekeeper was not supposed to comment on such words. After a small laugh, he turned around and continued to lead the way. Millie, who followed, said, I didn't expect to see the modern version of Cinderella with my own eyes. In fact, the real top families have no freedom to deal with the problems of marriage. They must make sacrifices and concessions for the interest of the Livingston family. A while ago, Millie's father held a blind date for her, although many people came at that time. But none of them are ordinary, the least of which had small fortunes that amounted to hundred millions of dollars. Millie's father could not accept to have his daughter marry into a family with so little funds. Even an heir with billions would not satisfy him. When Millie's father learned that the Banners family heirs wanted to pursue his daughter, he almost lost his teeth. Kaliko's family and Banner's family are absolutely a match. It's rare for them to be able to see each other in the right way. It's just something we can't get. Therefore, Millie's father did not stop the two of them from getting together all day long. Instead, he was in favor of it and contributed to the situation. I wish that I could let my daughter bear the flesh and blood of the Banner family now and build a strong family. Randy, who saves money, has no other idea than to do just that. Harry followed the housekeeper to enjoy all kinds of beautiful scenery in the manor, and he also learned a lot about the manor so he could learn what to do for the manor that he was building. Follow the housekeeper to learn about the details of other people's manors. Manor buildings are affordable to the super rich. Every manor is like a small kingdom. In addition, when building their manors, every rich person has placed their aesthetic layout and furnishings. There are no two identical manors in the world. Because owners have plenty of money, they can create their unique territory according to their ideas. Although Harry won't copy the design here, he can expand his thinking by visiting other manors. It's also a good way to learn from others and create his own. For the decoration and layout of his manor, Harry has already had a lot of inspiration. For example, in the garden he was visiting just now, planting flowers and green plants is very particular and well managed. Although these must be taken care of by the gardener in the manor, it can be seen from the side that Sean is a flower lover. The whole manor is filled with the fragrance of flowers. Had Harry been allergic to pollen, otherwise he really can't come here. Mr. Parker, you see, the whole planting area of the manor is very particular. It can be divided into many different sections based on smell. It can also be planted according to the color of the flowers and the blooming period so that you can see the blooming flowers when you go to the manor. The housekeeper introduced as he walked. Well, I could see that the layout here is really attentive. Harry nodded with approval. You can enjoy different kinds of flowers and feel different fragrances every few steps. The problem is that there are so many flowers blooming in the whole manor, but the fragrance of the flowers is not confused. On the contrary, they have their areas and they will never be confused because they are blooming in the same area. That's why Harry felt that this place was ingenious. The original designer must have known both architectural planning and design and how to raise flowers and plants. Harry felt that his manor can also learn from this way to decorate. Of course, Harry won't plant all the flowers on his island where his manor is. That would be too unoriginal. Each manor location has its unique characteristics. Harry's manor is built on his island. The climate on the island is similar to that here, but generally speaking, the environment is much better. John's manor looked secluded here, but in fact, it's very close to the urban area of Washington. It's still a little noisy. Harry's island is far away from the densely populated land. There are mountains, rivers, waterfalls, and trees on the island. A good design is just like the peach blossom land far away from the world of mortals. Young master, I think it's going to rain. Let's go back. The housekeeper, who had been following him, looked at the sky and worried. Harry walked all the way to sea, unknowingly away from the manor's residential buildings, and ran into the mountain behind. At this time, if it rains and you are caught outside without an umbrella, when they go back, the whole person will be drenched. The housekeeper also looked at the sky and nodded. It's going to rain. This is the climate in Washington. It's sunny the moment before, and then it's going to rain the next moment. It's like this all year round. Just now, when they came here, it was really sunny. Now, in only a short time after that, the sky is already covered with dark clouds. It's estimated that it will rain a lot later. Since the sky is not permitting it, I do want to see it. I wanted to visit the small animals in front of me, Harry said regretfully. The location of the manor was far enough from the rest of the city so that many small wildlife could thrive on the grounds. In the back mountain forests of the whole manor, you could see small figures shuttling among the grass wherever you go. All kinds of squirrels, lovely rabbits, and cute deer live in the mountain forest, which is full of vitality and fascinating. Of course, in addition to these harmless animals that belong to the free range, There are many fierce predators. This type is not suitable for people outside. Instead, there is a separate area in the back mountains to prevent them from running out and hurting people. Harry thinks that it's very interesting to build a natural ecosystem like Sean's manor. When his manor is completed, he has to learn from this visit. Harry would buy some nice looking animals and raise them on the island. There was nothing else on the whole island except plants, which didn't look very lively. The only problem is that this super gorilla is a little bit difficult. This guy is not a vegetarian. It was said that there were many animals on the island long ago, but since Macaroni dominated the whole island, he has eaten up everything he can run down for more than 10 years. That is, if they don't have wings. Otherwise, the birds on the island could escape his bloody mouth. After this, when Harry would go to live on the island, he would be able to populate the island with enough food for Macaroni. Fortunately, Harry is still rich, otherwise, ordinary people can't afford to support him. Harry thought wildly in his mind, and he followed the housekeeper to go back. Their timing was not optimal, as it had started raining halfway back to the manor. First, it was sparse, and then it began to develop into heavy rain after a while. The housekeeper was very anxious. Harry is a distinguished guest of his family. If he was caught in the rain, he can't explain. Mr. Parker, I don't think it's good for us to keep going back. Not far to the right from here is a race course. There are buildings there. Why don't we take shelter from the rain first? The housekeeper held his head and suggested. Harry didn't think much about it, so he nodded and agreed. But if there is a place to take shelter from the rain, it's better than being drenched. Seeing that Harry agreed, the housekeeper quickly led the way to the nearby racecourse. The scale of the horse farm in Sean's manor is not small. From a long distance, Harry could hear the cries of the horses. When he entered the racecourse, he saw a dozen tall and powerful horses standing behind the truck. When the housekeeper saw Harry approaching, he still had a very respectful tone at him. Mr. Parker, the environment here is not very good. You can make do with it first. The rain in Washington comes and goes quickly. You don't have to wait for a long time. The housekeeper worried that Harry disliked the smell here, so he quickly comforted him. It was very clean. This is to be expected in a rich family's manor. Every day there are special staff to clean it more than once. However, no matter how diligent you are, the horse is always eating grass and excreting it. This results in the smell of horse urine and during, even if the cleaning is diligent. The housekeeper said that the rain would not last long, and Harry didn't care. Although he knew it was because he was afraid that he would dislike this place, he just said something comforting. What he didn't know was that Harry didn't care about the environment at all. After all, the horses were much better than the garbage. Harry used to deal with the garbage heap all day when he was picking up garbage. He had never seen such a bad environment. Compared with the stink and the feeling of flies flying all over the sky, the smell here is much better. Harry waved his hand to show that he didn't need to filter his feelings. Seeing that Harry was so reasonable, the housekeeper couldn't stop his admiration. Of course, he didn't know about Harry's miserable life for several years. But now, what the housekeeper knows is that Harry's identity is more than 100 times more noble than his own master. The housekeeper thought that he was worthy of the praise of the sir. From this point of view, he had a rare temperament. Ah, the rain is getting smaller. Mr. Parker, we don't have to wait too long. The housekeeper looked outside and said happily. At this time, the torrential rain just now had slowed down, and it seemed to have stopped. But the housekeeper's voice just fell, and he didn't wait to be happy for a long time. A flash of lightning pierced the sky, followed by a bang on the top of the heads. The huge thunder was so close that Harry's ears began to buzz. Well, it's better to stay. How come it's starting to rain again? The housekeeper sighed. As soon as the thunder fell, the big raindrops began to fall, blocking several people on their way back. The horses in the stalls were frightened by the thunder and suddenly began to become restless. A few horses even lifted their necks and nearly broke the rope. Just when they were at a loss, a loud hiss came from the depth of the horse. Whoa! In exaggeration, the sound was like a chant, and the whole herd suddenly quieted down because of the sound. What's that? Harry looks at the housekeeper with doubts and asks. Ah, that's the master's favorite horse, but he's a bit fierce, so he locked himself in the innermost compartment. If he puts them with the other horses, he will bully all the other horses. After listening to the housekeeper's explanation, Harry's curiosity came up. Well, can I go and have a look? The thunder just now scared people, not to mention horses. But when the whole herd was restless because of the thunder, there were still horses who were not afraid of thunder. Instead, they calmed the other horses with a cry. It seemed that in the consciousness of these horses, the master's favorite horse in the compartment is more terrible than thunder. For such a rare thing, Harry now encountered, of course, is to see what it is. First, satisfy their curiosity again. The housekeeper sees Harry's exuberant appearance, which is not good enough to disappoint him, because that horse is just like a treasure. In his heart, Master Sean ranks first, and this horse is the second. At ordinary times, the horse lost a chunk of hair, so he had to reprimand the staff, which showed how important the horse was in his heart. Take Harry to the deep compartment of the horse, open a small window on the wooden door. Harry can finally see the whole picture of this magical horse. Harry hadn't got to see it clearly yet. The first thing that comes into his eyes is a fiery red shape. This red is just like a burning flame. It's breathtaking. The whole body of the horse is red, and there's no other color at all. When he saw the window open, he put his head out and looked at Harry carefully. It seemed that he was also curious about the person who suddenly appeared. Because of its color and shape, this horse is very similar to the red horses in ancient times, so the master borrowed the name. The housekeeper stands beside to introduce a way. It's called the Red Rabbit. It's a horse worthy of the name. It's very appropriate. Harry agreed. The Red Rabbit horse in front of them is really handsome and powerful. The shoulder height alone is roughly estimated to be no less than 1.8 meters. In addition to the length of the neck and head, it is almost 2 meters. Harry looked at the horse while listening to the housekeeper's story about its origin. It's said that it's pure blood. In order to buy it, Sean spent a lot of money to defeat many powerful competitors. The purchase price was more than 300 million. In addition, the cost of raising such a horse is not a small fortune. In the past 2 years, the cost spent on this horse had been tens of millions. Compared with the cost of maintenance, the so-called luxury cars are simply not anywhere near the cost of maintaining such a well-bred horse. However, this horse is also very competitive. Mr. Livingston not only likes to raise horses, but also likes horse racing. All the money earned in the game is worth the cost of keeping the horse. He is pure bloodline, strong and handsome, and fast. It's a pity that he has a bad temper and bullies other horses all day. Even the staff who raise him are often bullied by him. Harry doesn't have to think about how he bullies people, because now he feels the same. After looking at each other for a long time, maybe he lost his interest in Harry. The Red Rabbit snorted at Harry, and Harry was covered with saliva. "Well, you beast! Harry is a distinguished guest invited by the master. How can you be so impolite?" In a hurry, the housekeeper didn't even consider whether a horse understood what people said. He pointed directly at the horse's nose and scolded him. As a result, it may be that the action of pushing the nose on the face angered the Red Rabbit and made a loud noise to the housekeeper. Then the result is needless to say. Like Harry, he was covered with saliva. Harry was amused when he didn't even care to clean up. He thought the horse was really interesting, and his spirit was no less than that of the little guy. "I've learned the temper of Red Rabbit. It's really extraordinary," Harry said with a smile. He took the handkerchief from June and wiped the saliva on his face. "Isn't it? Because of his bad temper, I don't know how many staff I've changed. I can't bear not to be bullied and leave on my own initiative after a long time." The housekeeper also took out a handkerchief from his pocket and sighed. Just as he was saying, there was the sound of car horns outside. It turned out that Harvey saw that it was raining outside and learned that Harry was in the backyard. He worried that they would be caught in the rain, so he quickly drove to pick them up. Considering the speed of Harry's walking, Harvey knew that he must have come to the stalls for shelter. As the owner of the manor, both he and Harvey are good-natured. They are always friendly to the servants. Even if they make mistakes, they just give a little reprimand as long as they are not serious mistakes. But this horse is different. While the staff may be reprimanded for minor things, the horse was given everything it could want. Despite the horse spitting at people and even sometimes kicking people, it was hardly ever reprimanded. People who are bullied can't say anything. Although they are animals in the final analysis with the favor of the master, no one dares to do anything to the horse. They're just a bully in the manor. Looking at Harry and the housekeeper's confusion, you don't have to guess what happened. Harry said with a helpless smile, "Your horse is really unfriendly." Harvey also felt the same way. "Who said it wasn't? Even I have suffered losses here several times. My father would have sold it if it hadn't been for the races." Harry nodded, but he knew that he's not greedy for the prize money earned by horse racing, but has such a horse that can win every race. Rich families also have a lot of ideas about secretly competing. Unlike the upstarts who have more money, they compete with each other on many elegant things. Horse racing is also popular entertainment in the rich family, or competition, to see whose horse can win. After Harvey said a few words, he stopped talking about the horse. It's also a horse. As the most distinguished guest of the Livingston family, Harry can't stay here all the time and smell the smell of horse dung. So he said, Harry, the smell here is too bad. Let's go back. Harry nodded. He agreed to Harvey's proposal. Harry came here just to take shelter from the rain, not for the horses raised here, although they are all valuable breeds. But Harry didn't like horses, so he agreed to leave without hesitation. When several people were driving to the main building of the manor, Harry saw that it was raining more and more heavily and said, Fortunately, I didn't get back in the rain just now, otherwise I would have been drenched. The sky outside turned dark with only splashes of light from the nearby lightning. The rain seemed to be coming down in sheets. The front window wiper speed of Harvey's car can't keep up with the speed of the rain. The housekeeper said, It used to be okay. This year the weather in Washington is abnormal. The frequency of the rain is higher than the previous years. Every time it rains, it's just like a hurricane. It's really... Looking at the housekeeper's face full of worry, Harry said, Is the housekeeper worried about something? The housekeeper nodded and said, There are few plains and many mountains in Washington. Once there is too much rain, it's easy to cause disasters. Harry said, Is there a problem with the drainage on this side of the house? Harvey said, Harry, you don't have to worry. No matter how heavy the rain is, it won't affect you, so you could be rest assured. Harry just joked a little. The cost of the Livingston family's manor is very high. It's estimated that there are more than $1 billion or $2 billion that can't be built. It would be a joke if such a luxury complex was washed down by the rainstorm. For example, the design and construction of such skyrocketing buildings must have taken into account all kinds of hidden dangers. Therefore, the manor buildings are among the best in terms of fire prevention, flood control, and earthquake resistance. Even if the external power supply is cut off due to various accidents, the manor also has a standby power generation system for use. Although Harry was constructing his manor, he has to take into consideration when he builds it. However, he does not need to take the initiative to mention it. Anna, as the main designer, will definitely consider it comprehensively for him. Back in the hall of the manor, because of the rainstorm outside, the servants of the manor were checking whether the doors and windows of the upstairs and downstairs were closed. A large group of people are running around. It was rather comical in a sadistic sort of way. The manor is big, with many rooms and windows. There must be many open rooms for ventilation. If you forget to close them all, it will inevitably begin to flood the house if the rain stays heavy long enough. The weather is changing too fast. If it's still like this tomorrow, can the birthday party be held? Back in the manor, Harry sees Randy discussing with Millie. Listening to Millie's question, Randy said, The rain doesn't affect the birthday party. Anyway, it's held in the manor, not outdoors. It's not a big problem whether the weather is good or not. Harvey came over and said, It depends on the situation. I don't like to be so grand. If there are fewer people, there are just the closest friends. They would bring a more comfortable atmosphere. Haha! What Harvey said is also my idea, that this person's status is high and many things can't be handled by his temperament. It's not okay whether he wants to deal with things on the scene or not. Sean came down the stairs. Harry nodded and thought it was true. The Livingston family occupies half of the entertainment industry. As the leader, he has to compromise on many things. Take his birthday party for an example. It's not so grand as he wants to hold, but it's in a hurry. Those people below him have to take advantage of the opportunity to please him, and there are many business partners or vassals. It's not too heartbreaking if no one comes. They all want to reap what they can from what Sean has sown. Mr. Livingston doesn't agree with them, at least in the position of the Livingston family. If you want to maintain your current position, you can't do it alone. Although it's raining hard outside, he can't spare time. There are still many acquaintances who come to visit in advance. He has to come to receive them. Even with more people coming, even Harvey had to help his father entertain them. As the only son of the Livingston family, he should do all these things, but he couldn't avoid them. At this time, it was not convenient for Harry to disturb Harvey, So he went to the room and arranged for them to have a rest under the guidance of the housekeeper. He had gotten rather wet despite running for shelter. Harry just changed into dry clothes. After taking a bath in the bathroom and coming out fresh, he saw Randy and Millie waiting for him in their room. Harry asked strangely, "Is there anything wrong now? Why did you guys come here without having fun in your room?" Randy didn't care. He said with a smile, "It's still broad daylight. It's not too late to talk about it at night." Listening to what he said in front of Harry, Millie stretched out her hand and twisted it on his waist. Harry said with a smile, "What do you want to do?" Randy was a little bored and said, "Harvey is busy entertaining guests. We don't have any acquaintances here. It's raining outside and we can't go out to play. It's boring. Why don't we play chess to pass the time?" Playing chess? The number of people is just right. Harry looks at June and asks her what she means. June nodded indifferently. Harry then spread out his hand and said, "Okay, but I don't know how to play. It might be more boring with me who can't play." Randy said with a smile, "How can we? Some of us just play. There is a 4-player chess board in your room. Let's hurry." Randy is familiar with the room and pushes open the door of a compartment in Harry's room. They played the game for most of the night, the 4 of them. Harry was rather lost to how the game was supposed to be played, while the 3 others had been familiar with regular chess but were happy to play with this odd version. Randy lost his temper and played until more than 12 o'clock in the morning. Finally, he felt that he couldn't match Harry's luck. It was too late to see if he could beat him with his skills alone. Game after game, they played with the stakes getting higher. At first, it was to see who could win, then Randy bet he could beat Harry. As the night went on, Randy was down about $1 million and Millie was down several thousand. Harry was sweeping the board. "I could see that you're really lucky, Harry. It's just that you can't accept this luck. At this rate, I'm going to have to bet Millie." Randy shook his head and said helplessly. Millie swiftly slapped Randy on the side of his head. She also blushed a little. Although the money lost to Harry is the same as pocket money for both of them, it's boring to lose like this all the time. Harry is willing to let them both win a few, but he did not want them to have this luck, and he did not know how to play, and he did not know how to let them win. Finally, looking at the account Randy transferred to him, he could only smile bitterly. After seeing them off, Harry was ready to have a rest. Outside, he didn't know when the rain will stop, but the sky looked gloomy when Harry was about to fall asleep. A thunderbolt woke him up again, and he opened the curtain to have a look. Outside, however, it began to rain again, and the sound was even louder than during the day. Harry pulled the curtain back and laid on the bed again. He thought that the old man's birthday was really moving. Even the heavens came to join in the fun. The next day, Harry didn't get up very early. After looking at the sky outside, it was still heavy rain. When he got up and went downstairs, he was surprised to find that there were no imaginary guests in the manor. Just like yesterday, there are only servants busy with their affairs in the whole manor. Mr. Livingston is celebrating his birthday today. It is said that there should have been guests at the door early in the morning. Therefore, seeing the current situation, Harry was puzzled, thinking that this was because of the weather that the birthday party was canceled. He couldn't see anyone but a few of the house staff. Seeing a servant passing by in a hurry, Harry grabbed him and asked, "Why didn't I see any guests here today? Did the birthday party change places?" The man who was held by Harry was startled. Harry was a distinguished guest of the Livingston family. Even Sean had to treat him carefully. He was a humble servant. How dare he talk to such a big man? Before he could answer Harry's question, the housekeeper came in from outside in a hurry. Just hearing Harry's question, he answered, "Mr. Parker, the birthday party has been canceled. I didn't tell since you are still resting." Harry asked, "How come it's canceled? Harvey said that come rain or sun, the party would be happening." The housekeeper said, "The master and they have all gone to provide disaster relief." "Disaster relief?" Harry stares in surprise and says. The housekeeper nodded bitterly. "The rainstorm last night caused landslides in many places in Washington, and there are many people affected. As the largest family in the local area, the Livingston family must help with disaster relief." Harry was a little surprised and nodded. "So where did Harvey go?" "Master went to town, 20 kilometers away, where the disaster was the most serious. But before he set out, he asked me to tell you to stay in the manor. If you have any instructions for Mr. Livingston, please let me know at any time. You can't be ignored," the housekeeper replied. "Well, I see. Thank you," Harry said. It was originally a birthday party. Who would have thought that, of all days, the land would give and cause so much damage? Towns and cities were built near water for many reasons, which come with their dangers. Once there are floods, cement and stone flows, landslides, and so on, the number of people affected is certainly not small. Back in his room, Harry turns on the TV and dials the local channel of Washington to see if there are any relevant news reports. Sure enough, there was no other program on the local TV channel, all about the reports and live broadcasts of this huge natural disaster. After watching for a long time, Harry's brow could not help wrinkling more and more tightly. This is more serious than he thought. There is almost no disaster-free place in Washington. The villages and towns built in the mountainous areas are among the most serious. Even the urban area of Washington is flooded, and the urban drainage system has completely lost its function. The whole city is flooded. If you want to go out, you can only go boating or swimming. Harvey's father is now in the city of Washington, dealing with all kinds of thorny problems, and Harvey is going to more seriously damaged villages and towns to help as many people as he can. Judging from the whole news report, Washington is now mostly underwater. There is a picture from the sky. Harry is shocked to see that the whole of Washington is submerged. Under this natural disaster, Washington has lost all the traffic from the outside world like an island. Even if the airport is full of water at this time, the plane can't take off and land at all, let alone the land railway and high speed. It could be said that Harry is also trapped in Washington now, and it is impossible to go back. Thanks to the good location of Sean's manor and considering the possibility of rainstorms and floods from the beginning of the design, it was not affected much. In addition to the panic of the people in the manor, there are plenty of food and drinking water which can last for a period of time without worry. June said anxiously to Harry, "Sir, we can't leave Washington now. For the sake of safety, you better stay at his manor and wait until the airport is restored." Without waiting for Harry to say anything, the door was pushed open. Randy came in with Millie, also shocked. "This was a big event," Randy said. Harry said helplessly, "Isn't it? Who could have thought that there would be such a heavy rain?" Millie said, "I was scared to death last night. The thunder and rain outside were just like the end of the world. I've never seen such weather before." Harry and Randy didn't really feel anything. The main reason was that they slept too much at night and didn't know what was going on outside. Besides, the sound insulation of the room in his manor is also good. Although the thunder outside is loud, it is much lower when it comes into the room. Millie was awakened by a strange sound when she was sleeping. Then she saw the shining lightning that could illuminate the whole sky through the curtain. She almost peed in her pants. Last night, the never-seen-before gale, lightning, and rainstorm frightened her into Randy's arms. As a result, this guy not only didn't wake up, but also slept heartlessly and snored like a dead pig. Did the housekeeper say that Harvey had gone to the town below for disaster relief? I don't know what the situation is. Harry, do you want us to do something? Randy asked. Just now, Harry made several calls to Harvey. It may be that the disaster affected the communication equipment in the towns below, so he didn't get through several calls in succession. Now Randy talked about this problem. Harry said, "We must do something. Harvey has gone to the disaster area to save people. We can't just sit here." Randy scratched his head and said, "How can we act? This is not Florida. Neither of us can make any effort. Now the traffic is cut off and we can't summon people." "Yes, the four of us can't do much. Maybe we won't help but cause trouble instead," Millie worriedly said. The biggest advantage of Harry's three people is that they all come from rich and powerful families and can mobilize resources and manpower that ordinary people can't match. But all these are based on the smooth traffic. The current situation in Washington, where the sea, land, and air traffic are completely cut off and isolated, meant that they couldn't do much of anything. Harry can't help. It's true that people with money can do whatever they want, but under the natural power of the scale, human resources are always limited. Now Washington is affected too much by the rainstorm. Even if we bring aid, it can only be a drop in the bucket and cannot save too many people. Millie is not optimistic. There are millions of people in Washington, and it is estimated that no less than 1/3 of them are affected by the disaster. It is obviously impossible to rely on Harry alone to rescue such a large number of people. Harry shook his head and said, "In this case, if we can do something, we should do something. We shouldn't expect to save the whole state by ourselves." No matter how rich Harry is, he can't save every person in Washington with millions of people. Even local, what are you thinking? Randy and Millie are puzzled. Just now, Harry's surprise startled both of them. Harry excitedly said, People, it's not enough to rely on one or two people for disaster relief. Now Washington has been hit by the disaster. Looking to a select few is a poor idea, especially when they are the ones who are affected by the storm. The key lies in the strength and quantity of external rescue. Randy said, It goes without saying that the message of asking for help must have been sent out already. Harry waved his hand and said, It's not enough. In fact, Washington has a rescue force that can't be ignored all the time. What? Randy is a little confused. Now, there is no place in Washington that is not in the water. Even he's out. What hidden rescue force is there? Harry said to him, Have you forgotten those people who are going to attend the birthday party of Sean? Randy was surprised and said, Yes, I didn't expect that there were still these people. Now the traffic is cut off. They must be trapped in Washington and can't get out. Millie's idea is different from Harry's idea and is not as happy as Randy, but calmly said, Harry, I think those people are unreliable. They're all old-timers in the entertainment industry. Who is willing to do this unprofitable thing? And even if they are willing to help, they have to be able to get from place to place. With the roads and airport the way they are, it would be impossible. Randy responded and said, Yes, in this situation, even those people are willing to work hard. There is no place to start. Harry shook his head. You think it's easy. The disaster in Washington can't be solved by one or two groups of people. We can't rely on anyone. We can't. And those people can't either. Randy is dizzy again. Just now, he said that he would ask those people to help him. How can he say that he can't do it? What can he do? The weather is good on weekdays. Once in 100-year disaster like this happens, it's impossible to expect everything to run smoothly. What's necessary is to declare a national emergency and get the whole country's help. Neighboring states would not be able to help enough to save those who are affected. The reason why Harry now puts his mind on those who attend the banquet is to take advantage of the popularity in the entertainment industry. These people have no other skills, but their appeal to fans is incomparable. In addition, the idol is trapped in the disaster area. How can the idol fans not lend a helping hand? Those who have money will contribute, and those who don't want to do so must be fake fans. And for these people in the entertainment industry, what do they want most? Therefore, fame is life to these people. Helping Washington to relieve the disaster is also a good way to get fame. Moreover, fame is also very positive. No one will say you did anything wrong. The only problem is that, as Millie said, these people are old-fashioned. There are two questions about whether they can give up their immediate losses and earn long-term benefits. It's easy to solve this problem as long as Mr. Livingston comes out. As a big man who occupies half of the entertainment industry, as long as he orders, which of these people dare not to obey the order? After explaining the idea to Randy, Randy showed his admiration. It's a wonderful way to link up. So Harry is ready to go to the downtown area to look for Mr. Livingston. After finding the housekeeper to explain the situation to him, the housekeeper's face became more bitter. When his master went out, he told him that he must let Harry stay in the manor and take good care of him. When the traffic is restored and the surrounding area is safe, it's not too late to leave. The exquisite guest wanted to go downtown to the flood to find his master. Was he mad? The housekeeper could not fly, could he? Yes, Harry, it's all flooded from here to downtown. How can we find Sean? Randy always has endless questions. Harry said confidently, You forget that my car is the VTR Super Cross Country Amphibious. Randy scratched his head and said, Is that true? Is it still functional? He doesn't pay much attention to cars. He doesn't know. As a servant, the housekeeper can only persuade Harry, but he can't stop what Harry has decided. At this time, Sean is arranging his people to carry out disaster relief at the headquarters of the Livingston Group and also coordinating with several other powerful families in Washington. Although there have been many achievements, the extent of the disaster in Washington is unprecedented. Even the person in charge of the first family in Washington feels powerless. As a man who has a lot of wealth, he is not the kind of man who knows nothing but fish and meat. On the contrary, Sean Livingston has been committed to charity and public welfare over the years. What's more, the money invested is more than the profit of the Livingston Group now. It could be said that he has invested his family's wealth little by little. The purpose is nothing but a sense of responsibility. Now that his hometown has suffered such a rare disaster in the world, how can he not step forward? Just after coordinating part of the material and human support route, Sean Livingston rubbed his eyebrows wearily and wanted to have a rest. Old age, his energy is no longer as strong as before. Just 6 or 7 hours have been feeling very tired, which makes Sean Livingston have a sense of aging. The secretary outside the door reported that a man who called himself Harry had come to see him. Sean Livingston is stunned for a moment, wondering why Harry came here. Is there something wrong with the manor? It's impossible. If something happens to the manor, it must be the housekeeper who gives him the first message. Harry is a guest. How can he know where he is? Harry, why are you here? Sean Livingston stood up to greet him. Uncle, I came to give you advice for disaster relief, Harry said, straight to the theme. But Sean Livingston was too tired to concentrate because of his work. Instead of hearing Harry's words, he asked, The water outside has become a sea. How did you get here? Sean Livingston knows that there is everything in his manor, but there is no boat. Now, in the urban area of Washington, if you don't drive by boat, you can only choose to swim, but Harry is very dry and has no water stains at all. Seeing that the old man was so curious, Harry had to explain again. I have an amphibious off-road vehicle. Oh, right, the VTR, I remember. By the way, you just said that you came here to help me with disaster relief? Sean Livingston finally got to the point. Harry cleared his throat and said, Yes, Uncle. I'm thinking that those people who came to your birthday party are still trapped in Washington. Before Harry finished, Sean Livingston shook his head with a bitter smile and said, I've thought about that too. I've sent someone to contact them, but to tell you the truth, few people are willing to do it. Harry raised his eyebrows and asked, Can you call on these people with your position in the entertainment industry? Sean Livingston said helplessly, This kind of thing is to be voluntary. I heard Harvey say that you are also involved in the entertainment industry now. You should know that although people in the circle often appear to attend charity events, most of them are hypocrites. With that, Sean Livingston sneered. Only when it's profitable or when it's good for your reputation, these people will hypocritically participate in it. If it's not profitable, you can't even force them to get out of bed. Sean Livingston takes a look at Harry and thinks that he is still young after all and can't beat him too much. He continued, Of course, there are still some people who really do charity and don't ask for anything in return. However, there are not many such people. Since you have given me suggestions, I'll go and ask again to see if I can find more willing people. Harry waved his hand and said, Don't worry, Uncle. Just now you said that most people don't want to because they don't have interest. But what if I make it a reward? Harry said and opened the box he had been carrying. Sean Livingston was shocked at the reward Harry had brought. What was in the box is Harry's impressive jade cabbage. Sean Livingston is an expert in jade. He knows that it's a very precious jade sculpture, and its appearance is the best he had ever seen. Heart-shocked, regardless of etiquette, without waiting for Harry to express, he grabbed it in his hand to see. When he saw that Noah Fielding, the jade carving master, had signed on the base of the jade cabbage, Sean Livingston's heart trembled. This is Noah's work. It's priceless. Priceless. Sean Livingston's eyes are shining, and his qualifications are not enough. Harry couldn't help laughing. Sure enough, in the eyes of Sean Livingston, a jade collector, this jade cabbage is priceless. But in the eyes of those who don't know how to appreciate it, it's no different from ordinary jade. When Sean Livingston was shocked, Harry sighed. In fact, this jade cabbage was meant to be given to you as a birthday gift, but now the situation is special. I can only use it for disaster relief. Sean, don't you blame me? Sean Livingston was stunned for a moment, but he didn't expect that the best jade would be given to him. Suddenly, he had mixed feelings in his heart, but he couldn't distinguish between priorities. Just like Harry said, saving people is like fighting a fire. It's just a piece of jade. It can't be more valuable than human life. What's more, if you really give it to yourself as a birthday present, Sean Livingston really dares not to accept it. Harry, your gift is too much. How can I accept such a precious gift without any reason? But it's better now. If you are really determined to take out this treasure to attract people for disaster relief, I can help gather people together. Harry nodded. Thank you for understanding, Uncle. I'm sorry to trouble you. John Livingston waved his hand. Don't say that yet. You haven't told me what I'm going to do. Harry sorted out the next train of thought, then put his previous plan together. Let Sean Livingston also see whether it is feasible. As for this jade, it is not very important in Harry's mind. After all, it's just picked up by hand. It's too easy to get, so he doesn't have the heart to cherish it. Besides, there seems to be a whole vein on Allen Island. It's just a piece of jade. In contrast, Washington is suffering from such a big disaster, and countless people are displaced. Harry doesn't want to rescue suddenly. But in those years at the bottom of the life, for this precarious life experience is too deep. So now that he has the ability to help, why not help? This jade cabbage is just a bait or a reward. Most of those who want to attend Sean Livingston's birthday party occupy a high position in the entertainment industry. Among them, there are many big stars and idols. It's not very helpful to expect these people to pay. But we can use their fame to build momentum for the rescue of Washington and guide more people outside to know about the disaster. At the same time, it also attracts more people to come here to participate in the disaster relief. The so-called more people, more power means that in this case, the power of individuals is always weak. Only by the power of countless people can Washington tide over the difficulties. The purpose of throwing out this jade cabbage is to let these people see the benefits, and then they have the motivation to help. Otherwise, who will take care of the lives of the civilians at the bottom? So after the disaster relief is completed, you could take the lead to organize an evaluation committee. Whoever contributes the most here will own the jade cabbage. Is that okay with you? When Harry said the plan, Sean Livingston closed his eyes and thought for a while. At last, he opened his eyes and said firmly, "Yes, that's it." Harry didn't expect that Sean Livingston agreed to be so happy, and there was no objection at all. Because this matter, especially the final selection, is very competitive, there is only one bait that can be released. In the end, only one person can get it. While others are busy, they do a lot of work, but they don't even get anything at all. Can they not be angry? Therefore, Sean Livingston has great courage to undertake this task. In terms of his position, he can mobilize all the people in the entertainment industry by relying on his prestige. If Harry comes in person, it will not work. No one will believe him, even if he has a jade cabbage. So in this matter, Harry has to ask for help from Sean Livingston. Only he is the most suitable person. "Uncle, you are so compassionate. I really admire you," Harry exclaimed. Sean Livingston said with a smile, "This sentence should be used on you. After all, Washington is my home state. It's my duty to help my home state when it's in trouble. As a guest, Harry, you could take out your treasure to help with the disaster relief. This is your compassion." Harry waved his hand. "In fact, I have one more thing to ask of you, Uncle. In this matter, don't let out the information about me. The jade is yours. This idea is also carried out by you. Don't let people know my identity." As soon as the voice fell, Sean Livingston was not willing to say, "How can this work? In this way, I will not become a person who deceives the world." Harry said, "Don't worry, Uncle. The jade is meant to be given to you, so there's no mistake in my statement. Besides, as the successor of the Parker family, I have to keep a low profile on some things that I do. It's not convenient to talk about the specific reasons." Sean Livingston can guess some. Through this day's contact, he can also see that Harry and Harvey are the same kind of people who do not like to fight. Born with a weak heart, if Harry is famous in the disaster relief activities, it is likely to be speculated by those competitors in the family that he wants to accumulate popularity. Considering the complicated relationship and interests within the big family, Sean Livingston was silent. After a long time, he said, "Well, in order to provide disaster relief, I will put aside my face and be a person who deceives the world and steals fame." The natural disaster in Washington is unprecedented serious. Sean Livingston was not considered asking for help from the outside world. But in these days, powerful families only focus on interest, and they don't care who gets the benefits. Now, it's not the same. The treasure Harry brought out makes things turn for the better. Such a large piece of jade is a rare treasure. In addition to the master's carving of jade cabbage, it makes the value more inestimable. Even Sean Livingston has some uncontrollable desire for possession in his heart. With the temptation of this priceless treasure, those who are indifferent and wait and see will be moved. After giving the jade to Sean Livingston, Harry left. The headquarters of the Livingston Group is located on a high ground, but it is not flooded. Harry can directly drive back to Sean's manor from the viaduct around the city. There are almost no other vehicles on the way, only Harry's car on the road. The rainstorm was so fierce that the whole of Washington was trapped, and all the cities and remote towns were soaked in water. It's slightly better in the city. It's all high-rise buildings. Even if the ground floor is submerged, the people on the upper floor are not in danger. But there is also a very bad place. That is, once the supply of water and electricity is lost in high-rise residential buildings, it will not take long to become a cage unable to live. So the rescue is urgent, and compared with the city, the township below is more serious. Washington is mountainous, and the soil is relatively loose, so it is more prone to landslides after a sudden rainstorm. Harvey's town was the hardest hit area. Countless people are displaced and dare not to go out in the wild. What's more, the heavy rain is still falling, and people without homes can easily get sick without shelter. Through the Livingston family channel, Harry urgently mobilized a large number of tents, food and water, and even blankets and clothes. However, compared with the scope and number of people affected by the disaster, the materials he provided could not meet the needs of all people. After Harry drove back to the manor, he took Randy and Millie to the town. "Harry, I can't get in touch with Harvey at all. I don't know what the situation is. It's urgent," Randy said irritably in the car. "Don't worry, he didn't go alone. He took a large number of his subordinates with him. He won't be in any danger," Harry comforted. "Ah, I was happy to come to the birthday party, but who knows I was in such a bad mood when I met this situation." "Who said it wasn't?" Harry nodded, but also with some helplessness. The road to town is not easy to walk. It is full of rugged mountain roads. Even in normal times, there are falling rocks that often fall. Now, after the rainstorm, the cliff on one side of the mountain road is even more dangerous. Mud and gravel are just like dumplings. Harry's car is bulletproof, and the whole body is very strong. They don't worry too much about gravel. At most, it's just a little paint. If the ordinary family car is not so easy, any falling rock will have to break a hole. To the mountain, jingling against the rocks, when it was close to the boundary of the town, the whole mountain collapsed in front of it. Almost half of the mountain collapsed, blocking the road ahead. There are a lot of rescue engineering vehicles here to get through the emergency, and they want to recover the traffic as soon as possible. However, there are too many rock falls and mud falls, and it will be impossible to open them after looking at the quantities for a while. "How did Harvey get there when there was such a jam here?" Randy doubts away. Harry looked at it and said, "It should have just been formed. When Harvey passed, there was no collapse here." Several people were talking in the car, trying to see if there were any way to get around. When a commander in front of the construction rescue saw Harry's car, he immediately lit up. He ran over and knocked on the window anxiously and said, "Are you going into town? There's danger ahead." Harry dropped the car window and said, "We have to go. Our friends are over there." The rescue commander said happily, "It's said that people can't go in anymore, but there are some emergency medicines that need to be delivered as soon as possible. I think your off-road ability is good. Can you help me?" "First aid medicine? Yes, the problem is that I can't get it by now," Harry said helplessly. Although his VTR super off-road vehicle has outstanding performance, it is not omnipotent. Now the whole road is blocked. He thought that unless he flies past. The rescue commander said in a low voice, "Don't worry about this. I will clear out some stones as soon as possible. Other cars can't get by. This car should be okay." Harry nodded. "Okay, do it as soon as possible." These rescue workers and engineering vehicles can clear out a section that Harry can't wait for. Although there may be danger ahead, Harry can't refuse to go find Harvey or send emergency medicine to him. During the construction period of the rescue engineering vehicle, Harry and several of them got off to help carry drugs from an ambulance parked on the side of the road. These meds are urgently needed, but they are blocked in the middle of the road. The doctor in the car who was going to town almost jumped. Fortunately, Harry's car came, so he had a way to get past the blockage. In addition to this doctor, there are several small nurses in the same trade. All of them are from the hospitals in the urban area to mobilize people to support the villages and towns below. Two of the little nurses are reluctant. They are still safe in the urban hospital. Now they are arranged on the rescue vehicle in the town by a transfer order. Strangely, they are happy. When they came to town, the road was blocked by falling rocks, and they were secretly happy. Harry thought it would be better to block it directly and stop digging. In this way, they don't have to risk their lives and work hard to go down. But Harry's help immediately disappoints them. One of the nurses endured the displeasure of her boss and asked, "Doctor, the road is blocked like this. Unless it's flying past, other cars can't pass. Can the strange car in front of you do it?" "Yes, it looks very strong, but it can't fly over," someone echoed. They're all in one mind. It's better to work in vain. It's better if they can't get by. The doctor's a little older and has much more knowledge than these little nurses. Seeing that Harry agreed to help, he was very happy. With a smile on his face, he replied, "What kind of strange car? This is a VTR, a super SUV. Do you know how much it costs?" "How much is it? It's more expensive than the new car bought by the dean." In the eyes of these little nurses, the luxury car newly bought by the dean are already astronomically priced. They're more expensive than some sports cars. What better car is there? In their shallow cognition, luxury cars are not worth mentioning except those millions of business cars, that is, sports cars. Seeing that the nurses didn't care, the doctor said with a smile, "What's the car of the dean? Worth a few $1,000,000? This VTR is several times that price." A few of the nurses were shocked. They didn't expect that there was such an expensive car in the world. Their monthly salary is only $2,000 or $3,000. Spending millions on a car was just an unfathomable idea. "Don't stare all day. We have things to do and people to save." Dr. Laz disdained several of his nurses. These days, a younger generation has a lot of aspirations, so they see this kind of work as beneath them. The problem is that the power is nothing, but you have to have vision. Tens of millions. My God, how rich are the people in this car? We won't be able to fit everyone in the VTR as well as the medicine. You can load the first aid medicine. You can leave us behind. We'll see you and the doctor on the bus later. In the ambulance, a few nurses suddenly came to the scene. They would never say they didn't want to go to town anymore. They would like to take a ride in Harry's car now. When Harry and Randy came out of the car and were ready to help carry the medicine, the little nurses were almost starry-eyed. Harry was rather handsome, and Randy was pretty good-looking too. Coupled with driving a $1,000,000 luxury car, suddenly in the eyes of the few nurses, Harry was like a prize they had won. "Don't stop me. I'll be the co-pilot later." Harry didn't let June drive all the way to town. Recently, June is alone in the escort work of Harry. No matter how energetic she was, she will be tired. Harry looked distressed, then took over the driving work. The first aid medicine transported to town was not in the ambulance, but in another van. Although compared with the freight car, Harry's car must be less loaded. But now the situation is urgent. As many as they can, they need to transport the most urgent ones first. Dr. Laz was more responsible. He got out of the car and helped the transporters on the van to identify the most needed medicines. Then he said to Harry, "Hello, thank you for helping with the transportation. I'm a doctor going to Quick River Town." "Oh, hello, Dr. Laz. My name is Harry. I'm looking for my friend." Dr. Laz then said, "Mr. Parker, can you take me? Quick River Town is not only short of drugs, but also medical staff. I have to hurry to get there." Harry nodded. "Of course, no problem. The car can still sit a few more people." "Thank you so much." Dr. Laz was overjoyed. "You're welcome. It should be easy to get to. Anyway, it's on the way." Harry shook hands with Dr. Laz. Then Dr. Laz was a little embarrassed and said, "Mr. Parker, I'm not the only one, but also a few nurses. Do you see?" Harry waved his hand. "It's no problem, but in this way it's hard to avoid bringing less medicine by bringing more people." On one side, Randy said, "Harry, put the medicine in the luggage rack on the roof of the car. That way you can pack more medicine. It should be okay to cover and bind it with waterproof cloth." Harry nodded and said, "That is the only way." The drugs that need to be transported are large in volume, but actually they have no weight, but they take up more space. Harry's car is full of power, so they don't have to worry about overloading if he could take a few more people and some medicine. After discussion, Dr. Laz went back to the ambulance and said to several nurses of the same trade, "Let's go, it's time for us to start." The impatient nurses who had been waiting for a long time rushed out of the ambulance and couldn't wait to drill into Harry's car. Everyone wanted to sit in the passenger seat. But when they pulled the front passenger's door open, they found that the person sitting in it was not Harry at all, but a man. "There's someone on the co-pilot seat, but it's not Harry, it's Millie." Because they have to drive over obstacles later, although the posture and skills of Harry and June are okay, There is a more professional one in the car. Millie spent more time playing with the car than the two of them put together, so this kind of difficult driving was directly handed over to her. So they sat in front, Harry and June in the second row, and Dr. Laz was also next to Harry in the second row. In the back were a couple of nurses who were less than happy to not be in front or sitting next to Harry. It's enough to have the chance to sit in a multi-million-dollar car. Now maybe they can get to know Harry, a handsome car owner. Their temperament was not great, but they bit their tongues so they could potentially seduce Harry. But after waiting to do well in the car, a few people were surprised to find that the girl beside Harry was just out of the ordinary. June didn't have to speak, but she just sat quietly and shocked the little nurses. Her beauty is enough to make one feel ashamed. Compared with June, these nurses feel like a group of local chickens sitting with an elegant white swan, and they can't compare. Thinking of Harry as some rich and handsome man, of course, he would have at least one beautiful woman by his side. Thinking about this, the nurses wanted to see where Harry was with his wealth and whether June was his woman. One of them refused to give up and asked Harry, "Well, is this car yours?" In her heart, maybe the car doesn't belong to Harry. There's a handsome guy in front of them. He's not bad. Maybe the car belongs to someone else. But Harry nodded. "Yes, it's mine. What's the matter? What's the problem?" No, nothing is wrong. After a moment of embarrassment, the road outside was almost cleaned up. The commander waved his hand and yelled, "You could try to pass, but be slow. Be careful. Although it's passable, it's rugged. Ordinary vehicles couldn't pass directly." That is, Harry's Supercross Road country car can ignore the bad road conditions and try to pass. Inside the car, Millie, sitting in the driver's seat, took a deep breath and said, "Fasten your seatbelts and hold tight. I'm going to drive." Harry's super off-road unparalleled performance, coupled with Millie's skillful driving skills through this section of the Rockfall Road, should be no problem. But now, after all, it's a very bad weather condition. No one could say what unexpected situation will happen next moment. If one is not careful, or too unlucky, this section of road has a cliff on one side and a cliff on the other. Now no one in the car has a messy mind. They all hold their breath and watch the car slowly heading towards the collapse of the road under Millie's driving. Everyone is afraid to breathe, as if a little bit of breathing can make the car out of balance. Harry is also a little nervous, subconsciously wanting to grab the armrest on the seat, but caught June's slender hand instead. June is very calm, but after feeling the cold sweat from the palm of Harry's hand, she holds Harry's hand in turn and gives him a soft warmth and a reassuring look. After seeing June's eyes, Harry didn't know what to do, but he felt calmer. Suddenly, he didn't panic. As Harry's bodyguard, June wants to dissuade Harry from taking risks here, but after spending so long together, she also knows what Harry's temperament is. Once he decides in his heart, he won't give up. June is quiet on weekdays. As long as Harry makes the arrangement and decisions, she will not have any objections. The only thing she needs to do is to implement it or to accompany Harry to protect him. VTR Super Off-Road Vehicle engine outburst of roar. After careful test, Millie knew it. Then in the eyes of the roadside rescue workers, this huge off-road vehicle doesn't seem to be as heavy as it looks. After a roar, she climbed over a stone more than 1 meter high and came to the collapsed road. No matter the rock protruding from the road or deep mud can't stop the iron beast from moving forward. Come up, ha ha! I said I could do it!" Millie laughed. And outside, those in charge of the road rescue personnel are also cheering. If the road collapses, it could be cleaned up slowly, but in front of it is a disaster area waiting for the first aid medicine. 1 minute later, one injured person may lose their life. Therefore, these people are also anxious to get there. Now, the most urgent medicine is loaded in Harry's car, and they have to drive on the collapsed road. "There's help! There's help in Quick River Town at last!" exclaimed the commander excitedly. Compared with the excitement of these people outside, all the people in Harry's car, except Millie, who was driving the car with a crazy face, didn't feel so well. Harry's suspension is the most advanced, but it can't resist the violent turbulence. The length of the whole road collapse is about hundreds of meters, which is usually a matter of stepping on the accelerator. But now the path takes an extended period, which did not help their nerves. In addition to the violent turbulence, people in the car followed up and down, and soon someone could not help retching. Harry felt all right, but he knew other people might have weaker stomachs. The little nurses sitting behind have no resistance. They are about to be tossed and vomit. But Dr. Lass suddenly turned back and said, "Don't vomit. You must hold it in. It's a luxury car worth millions. You can't afford to pay for it if you mess it up." A few little nurses were so scared that their eyes were staring out. Then they remembered that the car they had been sitting in was very special. With Dr. Laz's warning, several small nurses directly swallowed their fear and tensed all their muscles in an attempt to stabilize their bodies and their minds. Harry was stunned. He thought that Dr. Laz was very careful. Although he didn't want to get the car dirty, he couldn't help it. So he took out a few garbage bags from the storage box in front of him and handed them to him, saying, "It's okay, I can't help but not too reluctantly spit here." "Thank you." Several little nurses looked at Harry with grateful eyes and quickly took the bag in their hands and put it in their mouth. Seeing this, Dr. Laz on one side said very difficultly, "Well, Mr. Parker, do you have any bags? Can you give me one too?" Randy in front of him seemed to be unable to help himself. He also said in a voice, "Harry, give me one too." Finally, with Millie's superb driving skills, the whole car passed the collapsed section of the road and drove for a long distance. After waiting for a relatively open and safe position, Millie stopped the car because the smell in the car is too bad. As soon as the car stopped, several people couldn't wait to open the door and run down. Harry can't bear the smell in the car. After opening the air purification system in the car, he immediately gets out of the car to breathe the fresh air. June was afraid that Harry would get wet, so she followed him with an umbrella and held it for him. After cleaning up a pile of vomit made by themselves, a few little nurses saw Harry and June standing in the rain holding umbrellas. The nurses couldn't help but say, "This is a man of talent and a woman of beauty. It looks like a perfect match. It's enviable and envious." "Let's not be paranoid. This is because Mr. Parker looks like a noble young man. I think we should lie down on the ground like this." Several nurses felt inferior and didn't dare to think about Harry anymore. They were so embarrassed just now that they thought June would look the same. Who knew that this beautiful swan would have a strong constitution and was not affected by turbulence at all? After a short rest, they set out for Quick River Town again after the air in the car was changed. After the collapse of the road, although the rest of the road is not very easy to drive, finally they did not encounter too many obstacles. They finally arrived in Quick River Town. After sending Dr. Laz and their emergency medicine to the temporary rescue center, Harry wanted to know where Harvey was going. The communication in Quick River Town has been completely cut off, and the collapse of the mountain has destroyed most of the communication base stations, which is why Harvey can't get in touch. But Harry didn't bother to inquire. Harry had already seen Harvey's figure. As the heir of the Livingston family, Harvey's usual dress is not luxurious, but he is always clean and meticulous. But now, Harvey wouldn't appear to be rich at all. He was covered in mud and grim. If he didn't take the initiative to say hello to Harry, Harry would never recognize the man standing in front of him as Harvey. "Harry, why are you here? Didn't you say that the road outside is blocked?" Harvey doubts away. There is only one road leading to Quick River Town, which is where Harry came from. They all thought it would take a day or two to clear the road, but now Harry came in. "I'm worried about you, so we're all here." "What are you doing?" Harry said. Harvey gave a wry smile. "Don't mention it. Just now I found that there was a life signal in a house buried by earth and stone, and there was no time to dispatch the evacuation truck, so I had to dig by hand." Randy was concerned and said, "Did that man come out?" "He's been rescued. He just been sent in. His vital signs are a little weak. Now there is a lack of emergency medicine, and I don't know if we can get it back." Harvey, with some tiredness, said, "Don't worry, when I came here I met a blocked rescue vehicle on the way. I helped to bring some medicine in," Harry said. Harvey nodded happily. "Yes, that's really great. Now the most urgent thing here is our need for medicine. In this way, many people will be saved." Quick River Town is a small town with a backyard economy. The hospitals above the town are not of any large scale. It's okay to deal with a minor disease such as a cold or a cough. But in the face of such a large-scale disaster, the hospitals were ill-prepared for the amount of destruction that occurred. Before Harvey came, he took advantage of the smooth road with his family to transport a lot of materials, equipment and medicine, but after the initial distribution, they ran out of materials quickly. Just now, the detector found another life signal under a buried house, so Harvey quickly organized people to dig it, and the men succeeded in digging them out. But because of the collapse of the house, people have been smashed into serious injuries. Without the relevant medicine and medical skills of the doctor first aid, this person cannot last long. Fortunately, Harry not only brought medicine but also a doctor to the city. "Tell me, what's going on here?" Harry asked Harvey to sit down and rest. Harvey sighed. "Ugh, it's very serious. The disaster has come so suddenly that no one could prepare for it. All of a sudden, torrential rain, debris flow, and landslides came. Up to now, it's impossible to count the exact number of people affected by the disaster. There are too few rescue forces now." Randy asked with concern. "Harvey, I remember your hometown is Quick River Town. Are your relatives safe here?" Quick River Town is the ancestral place of the Livingston family. Sean Livingston came out from here and wandered outside. When he broke out of the world, he returned to Washington. Although Quick River Town was once his hometown, he doesn't live here much. There are still many relatives in his hometown. That's why Harvey chose to come to Quick River Town. People are always selfish. Of course, it's also because the disaster here is the most serious. In the face of such a large-scale disaster, it is impossible to take care of the whole state only by the strength of any one family. Not to mention the whole of Washington, even the small Quick River Town, Harvey is not sure he can do enough to help. There are landslides everywhere, there are buried people everywhere, and it is impossible to rescue everyone at the same time. Harvey sighed again. "At last, no one cares now. If you could save one, that's better than nothing." "Don't worry too much. Harry and Sean have discussed that they should take out the jade as a reward and let the people stranded in the entertainment circle of Washington seek help from their fans and help the community," Randy said. No one knows the appeal of these people in the entertainment circle better than he. Although, strictly speaking, it's just a group of people entertaining the public. In this age of entertainment to death, stars have become the most inviolable profession. They have a large number of fans, as long as the idol's next instruction, even those iron fans dare to break through. "Harry, your piece of jade is a treasure, so you took it out?" Harvey can't accept it. Harry's jade has more than superficial value, because the precious variety and the aura of the master's work, which is a family heirloom that can be collected, have been taken out in this way. Harry waved his hand and said, "What's mine? This jade belongs to your father. It was meant to be given to him, or Sean knows the truth." Harvey said with a bitter smile, "Either way, it doesn't matter to me. I feel that it is nowhere close to the value of a human life." Harry looked at Harvey, who was all wet. Now he looked embarrassed. In addition, it's raining outside. If it's like this all the time, it's hard to avoid getting sick. Then said, "You better get a change of dry clothes. Here now the condition is so bad, 10,000 at least are in trouble." Millie also said, "Yes, you're all wet. Go and take a hot bath." Harvey couldn't help laughing. There's no place to take the hot bath in Quick River Town now. Even if you want to drink a mouthful of clean water, it's not easy. Then he shook his head and said, "No, even if I can change my clothes, I have to come back to help that they would get ruined again and again. I have to go save the people after a short rest." Millie frowned and said, "This kind of thing is done by your subordinates. Why do you have to do it yourself?" Millie thought it was common for the rich and powerful to send all their subordinates to do the dirty work while they stayed comfortable. Harvey didn't care about Millie's words. He knew that she was not malicious, but simply used the life of being served before. "I don't feel the same way you do. This is a completely different scenario. My family is wealthy, but I have never once thought of myself as better than anybody. We have staff, but they're not treated like subhumans. Regardless, the people in this town that I love need help, and I would not be the man I am now if I did not help those in need." After listening to Harvey's words, Harry's brows wrinkled. No one can understand the misery and despair of Quick River Town without seeing it with their own eyes. The whole town was almost buried by the collapsed mountains, except for a few high buildings that were exposed. From the sky, it was almost flattened. The whole boundary of Quick River Town now has no movement except the sound of heavy rain. The usual bustling town was now quiet of all the normal traffic. Under this silence, there are countless buried fears and desperation. No one knows how many of them can wait for rescue, and how many of them die slowly in the fear of darkness and suffocation. The situation is even more serious than Harry imagined. Harvey also took action to save people. Now that Harry is here, he wants to contribute his part. A few people, as the children of rich families, usually have resources that ordinary people can't reach. In a word, they can mobilize thousands or even tens of thousands of people. But now, in this situation, Harry finds that he is no different from ordinary. There are many people under Harry's command, but they are all in Maryland and Florida, which are thousands of miles away. If you want to transfer people over for the first time, you can only take a plane. But now the airport in Washington has been flooded, and even the other two spare airports can't be used because of the flood. It's the same here in Quick River Town. A small town doesn't have the conditions for taking off and landing a large plane, and it's impossible to use a helicopter. Now it's raining heavily outside. In the mountainous area, it's almost like death to let the helicopter take off and land in this heavy rain environment. Looking at Harvey's legs trembling because of fatigue and hearing the helpless cry of the survivors outside, Harry sighed. "Count me in as well. When we have a good rest, let's go save people together." When Harry arrived at Quick River Town, Sean Livingston was not idle. After gathering a large number of guests to attend the birthday party, Sean Livingston said Harry's previous suggestions without any polite remarks. "We all know the situation in Washington. Now we're in an urgent need of external rescue forces. Whether large groups or individuals have the strength to help, anything will be needed to help the people in Washington. We are all mixed up in the entertainment industry. Of course we have contacts and resources. Therefore, I hope that this difficult time you could stand up and contribute to the disaster-stricken people in Washington. No matter where I live or the whole Washington, I would be very grateful." Sean Livingston's exciting speech did not resonate with everyone. The eyes of the people present are indifferent, very indifferent. It doesn't matter if he comes up with something for disaster relief, but I don't dare to take it in. That is, what does this natural disaster have to do with us? It's bad luck for them when Washington is affected. I don't want to involve myself. If it wasn't for the traffic jams, I would have left early. Who would like to suffer here? There has been no hot water in the hotel since yesterday. I can't take a bath. There is only one meaning for everyone to whisper, that is to listen to nothing and do nothing. Although the Livingston family is powerful, most of the people in the entertainment circle are present. Sean Livingston can't help them. Kiss Holiday and Nathan were also sitting below. Originally, Sean Livingston was celebrating his birthday. What Kiss Holiday got was only an invitation on the outside of the birthday party. But now it's different. What Sean Livingston needs most is the appeal of these stars standing in front of the stage. Although the Livingston family's wealth is amazing, what Washington needs most now is wealth, but materials. Sean Livingston can't change his wealth into materials in the quickest time. He can only rely on the strength of all the people. It's better to organize rescue teams and material transportation teams in several adjacent areas of Washington as soon as possible. Only these stars can call on all the forces on a large scale. So now, the seat of Kiss Holiday is only one step away from Sean Livingston. She never thought that the man of the Livingston family would ask them to do something. Yes, it's a request. Sean Livingston is no longer a high-ranking old man, but a native of Washington asking them to give a part of their strength. "Kiss Holiday, what do you think of it? Isn't it good for our reputation to participate in disaster relief?" Nathan asked quietly. Kiss Holiday sniffed. "You're stupid. You don't see what's going on now. We used to do charity, but it's all for show. Now Mr. Livingston is here. Washington is a bottomless pit. How much money do you have to fill the void?" Nathan scratched his head and stopped talking. As a new rising little fresh meat, although his fame and status have broken out, his insight is not as good as Kiss Holiday in this complex entertainment circle. Stars are keen to do charity. There are a few true charity people. There are a few false actors, no one can tell. However, among the 100 people Kiss Holiday knew, one of them was good. Other people are slowly taking charity as a means and a tool to gain fame and throw it away when they run out of funds. There are those who really donate money with a little conscience. What's more, there are more fraudulent donations. Using their fame to connect with charity organizers, they apparently donated tens of millions of dollars, but didn't have a share and even made a lot of money. So now the disaster situation in Washington is unprecedented. In the eyes of ordinary people, those stars have no reason to refuse to help, which is no different from the charity they usually do. Contributing to saving the people of Washington, stars can also gain a positive reputation, so why not do it? But no one here is a fool. They won't do the business of losing money. This time, Sean Livingston called everyone to rescue, but it was different from the previous charity activities. Just as the scene became colder and no one responded to Sean Livingston, "This jade cabbage carved from jade. I'm going to reward the person who contributed the most to this disaster." Sean Livingston nodded as expected, then leaned over and lifted Harry's jade cabbage from the box beside him. Suddenly, everyone's eyes changed. Looking at the treasure in Sean Livingston's hand, everyone's eyes became greedy. We don't want to do charity that loses money, but if we can make money without losing money, it will be different. Jade, the top variety of jade, is a top treasure in itself. The jade Sean Livingston now takes out is incredibly big. The carved jade cabbage is exquisite and vivid. The difficulty is that the size is the same as a real cabbage, which is amazing. Which master carved it so exquisitely? Don't think that if it's carved into a jade cabbage, it's not the price of cabbage. Cabbage in jade carving is very rare. And Sean Livingston's next sentence shocked the audience. This jade cabbage is the work of Mr. Noah, the master of jade carving. It is his signature and a certificate issued by the master carver himself. This remark directly raised the whole audience's attention. Harry didn't know his position in the jade circle when he asked Noah to carve, because Harry didn't care much about this business. But in the entertainment industry, these people's eyes are not the same. People in the entertainment industry like to enjoy themselves, and most like to dress up as luxurious and noble. Therefore, jewelry and jade are indispensable, and Noah's reputation here is also high to the sky. As long as it's a work made by his hands, it's worth doubling and everyone grabs it. Now this jade cabbage was originally a rare treasure, and it was carved by Noah, which immediately made everyone present breathe heavily. As Sean Livingston finished, he looked at everyone with a smile and whispered, "As early as I said, if I had this jade as a prize, I would have to provide disaster relief if I have to dig out my family's money." "Your whole family is not worth this jade the sculpture is made of. Mr. Livingston, if you have anything to tell me, please don't be polite. I will support this disaster relief operation even if I have to die." After a long time, most people began to offer themselves and their money. But there are also some people who are very rational and not obsessed with jade cabbage. Kiss Holiday looked at those fanatical people around and immediately sneered. "There is only one jade cabbage. There are so many people on the scene. In the end, only one person can get it, so other people are not being busy in vain." Hearing these words, Nathan also recovered from the excitement. "Doubtway, Kiss Holiday, even if it is only one, we should work hard to also have the possibility of getting it." Kiss Holiday said, "Do you think you are very capable? There are more people here than strong people. Can you compete?" Nathan was disheartened. What he said is also, compared with wealth, Nathan is not as good as many people. After all, he's just a newcomer, and there are many well-known figures in the entertainment industry. This is not because he has a solid foundation, which is dozens of times better than Nathan's. What's more, there are a lot of behind-the-scenes bigwigs who are also eyeing the jade cabbage. However, Sean Livingston said after a while, "Rest assured, this time we are called together is not to ask you to donate how much money, but to use your appeal to find more people to participate in the rescue. Therefore, whoever calls for more people to rescue and who can play a greater role in the rescue will have the jade cabbage." These words ignited Nathan's heart. In terms of financial resources, he can't compare with most people now. But in terms of appeal, he thinks that he has the ability to compete with others. So he excitedly hugged Kiss Holiday's arm and said, "Kiss Holiday, do you hear me? It's not about who donates more money, but who has a strong appeal. I have tens of millions of fans. 1 in 100 people has millions." Kiss Holiday's eyes churned. "You can pull your audience. You can count on the number of fans. How dare you believe it?" Nathan said with a smile, "I think my fans will pull through." Kiss Holiday laughed in her heart and shook her head. Nathan's so-called tens of millions of fans come from the intention of his microblog. His microblog doesn't belong to him at all. It's operated by his company. All of that fame is just to look good and not his true self. It's good to have hundreds of thousands of real fans and millions more. As a well-known celebrity relationship, she dare not say that she has millions of fans. Of course, Kiss Holiday would not laugh at Nathan. Almost everyone in the circle knows the number and cost of fans, so there's no need to make fun of Nathan. Sean Livingston is very satisfied with the current atmosphere. When everyone knows that they don't have to donate money by themselves but call on everyone's fans to come to the rescue, these people felt comfortable. Mr. Livingston, I'll take the task. You could see my performance. I have a large number of fans and they are all tough as iron. I won't lose to anyone this time. Aha! I'm not greedy for that jade cabbage. The people in Washington are really miserable. How can a kind-hearted person like me go on and try my best? The entertainment circle is a big dive vat with all kinds of people. There are hypocrites, greedy hypocrites, honest hypocrites, but the real good people can't be seen here. Because people with a pure heart can't get high in this dirty circle. Sean Livingston doesn't care what these people are thinking, whether they're sincere in disaster relief or greedy for the jade cabbage, as long as they can contribute to the rescue of the people of Washington. Okay, please do it this time. Time is pressing, so I won't nag anymore. Please go and call your staff quickly. Sean Livingston said aloud and ended the meeting. Because it was held in the largest five-star hotel, most of these people were living here. Now, they are not in a hurry to go back to their rooms. Instead, they quickly calculated in their hearts of how many fans they have and how many of them can respond to their call to come to provide disaster relief. But these problems are not big. As a person in the entertainment industry, the most basic skill is to be able to act. The so-called acting does not mean that when most people here are allowed to film, their acting skills are just like rubbish. But it's a piece of cake for the fans if they perform perfectly in front of them. After returning to the room, Nathan first calmed down and brewed his feelings, and then chose to take small videos as a channel to call on his fans. Fortunately, the network in Washington City can still be used now. Although the signal is much slower than usual, it is enough. After setting up his mobile phone and adjusting his makeup, Nathan began his performance with both voice and emotion. First, he tells the current situation of Washington and the miserable experience of ordinary people, and then talks about the lack of material supplies here. In order to show the truth and persuasion, Nathan also prepared ginger slices in advance and put them on his eyes. He used this to have tears fall out of his eyes at just the right moment. After checking the video, Nathan didn't see anything wrong, so he clicked and send and finished. The rest is to see if his fans come to aid. Nathan thinks that if he doesn't work, he has to go outside to have a live broadcast. It's just that it's too hard. It's better to take a small video in the hotel. Apart from Nathan staying in the hotel to call on his fans, most of the other stars do the same. With the heavy rains and flood outside, who are the idle stars who are willing to go out and suffer? But there are also a small number of people in order to finally get the jade cabbage. They really had to fight for it. Assistants ran out of the hotel, directly came to the homes of the affected people, started a live interview. Most of the stars in the entertainment circle reported the disaster in Washington at the same time, which really caused a great sensation on the internet. Many people have seen relevant reports in the news before, but the official reports are not so detailed. Because the disaster came so suddenly, it can only be reported on a large scale. But the stars did a good job this time. They all portrayed the details of the disaster. It's like a high-rise community next to the hotel where they live. The flood inundated the lower floors, forcing the residents to have no choice but to spend the night in the upper corridors. The low-level residents are miserable, and the high-level residents are not comfortable either because the water and electricity are cut off, the food cannot be cooked, and the water won't last for a few days. What's more unacceptable is that there is no way to flush the toilet when the tap water is gone. This is still a high-end community, and the disaster situation is relatively light. Nothing more than no food and drink going to the toilet is not very convenient. But those old residents are even more miserable. Their houses are too old to withstand the rainstorm and flood. They become dangerous houses overnight, and they can no longer stay in them. Some people can only drag their family out in the rain, and there are floods 1 or 2 meters deep all over the outside. Where can they stay? So the most difficult thing to do is that if these people are not dealt with properly, people will be washed away by the flood every minute or lose their lives because they can't stand the wind and rain. Through the spread of stars, the miserable situation of the lower class people soon aroused the resonance of all the internet users. Countless people began to take action. Those with financial resources began to prepare for the delivery of relief materials to Washington. Those with little wealth but relatively close to Washington began to organize people to go there in person to restore the washed-down traffic arteries. Harry in Quick River Town doesn't know that the method he provided to Sean Livingston has been effective. He is now cleaning a house buried by debris flow in the rain with Harvey and Randy. There are tens of thousands of residents in the town alone, which has caused great difficulties in the disaster relief. Because there are too many houses buried by mudslides and landslides, there are not enough rescue workers. Harvey's men have long been sent out by him to save other places. June and Millie are also arranged by Harry to take care of the injured in the temporary emergency center. Now, it's just the three brothers who are looking for the traces of life buried in the soil by themselves. After finding the feedback signal on the instrument, he began to dig it himself. But although Harry felt that he did his best, his manpower was sometimes poor. Just relying on these three people relying on digging by hand is very limited. Often, the green light of the instrument, which represents vital signs, has gone out before much digging. For this kind of situation, although it is cruel to say, at this time, we have no choice but to give up. Because there are still many places where survivors may be buried, so they had to give priority to rescuing the most important. Maybe it's just because the instrument was misjudged. Maybe the people below are still alive, but they can't put all their hopes on the possibility. They must treat the current situation rationally, not too sentimental, to save more people. For example, the house they gave up digging just now, after Harvey carefully studied it, he found that it was a relative of his own, who had loved and cared for him very much when he was a child. If he spoke with emotion, Harvey would continue digging until he wanted to see if the people inside were alive or dead. But he didn't do it. The number of rescue workers was limited, and the number of victims was so large that he didn't have time to focus on his private affairs. Harvey just put away his shovel and said to Harry and Randy, "Let's go to the next place." Harry knew that he was upset and didn't say much consolation. He just nodded and called to Randy to another place. Before evacuating, they would first use their instruments to explore one side. If no vital signs are detected, they move to another place. Until three people came to a house buried by stones and mud. They thought that the people inside had been killed in this case, and they were ready to find another place. Because in this case, Harry has little experience, and usually there are no living people left. Landslides carry huge stones down the place. It is impossible to survive such a sudden impact. But the detector Harvey was holding in his hand was just a subconscious sweep. Who knew it would ring? They all looked at each other and said, "There are others." Then, needless to say, he began to wave the shovel and dig away the buried soil. "Harry, we had to hurry up. The vital signs of the people below are weakening." Harvey took time to look at the instrument. Harry bit his teeth and nodded. "Okay, hurry up." The house buried by boulders and mud is the most dangerous because it is still raining heavily. If it is dug too deep, it is easy to cause secondary collapse. In other words, they are risking their lives to save people. They may be buried in any time because of the rain. But now they don't care much. Although the signal detected that the detector is getting weaker and weaker, the chance to save them was growing small, but it still wasn't zero. Harry and his three men worked hard to dig out the mud and finally found the collapsed building ruins after clearing a large space. This shows that it was not far away from the people buried inside. Come on, it's going to be successful." Randy's eyes brightened and exclaimed excitedly. But Harvey got too excited. He began to get less careful. He dug too recklessly and pried the support point of the stone. These people are in trouble, and the already crumbling boulders are becoming more unstable. After a few shakes, a huge stone rolled down towards him. "Get out of the way!" Harvey saw it in time. Harvey dashed over and pushed Randy out of the way. Randy was blindsided. Randy was out of danger, but Harvey didn't have time to run and was crushed by the falling boulder. Randy's eyes gaped at the scene. Harry was far away from both of them, and he didn't have time to react, so he watched the scene happen in front of his eyes. "Harvey, are you okay? Are you okay?" Randy ran to pick up Harvey and asked. Panicked by what he saw, even Harry couldn't say. Harvey was hundreds of kilograms of boulder. How could he be okay? Harvey's painful face began to smoke. "Come on, let's take him to the hospital." Harry threw down his shovel and rushed to Randy. Harvey's condition is very serious. On his legs, blood is flowing out along his trousers and spread along the flow of water. Harry was so scared that he was afraid that he would be crippled, so he didn't care to save the buried people. He saved Harvey first. Just preparing to join forces with Randy to carry him up, Harvey grabs Harry's arms and stops him. Harry, I'm okay. You have to save the people trapped in the house. Don't give up. Listening to Harvey's voice was weak. Harry was angry. How are you fine? If we don't hurry to go to the hospital, what if your legs are disabled? Yes, Harvey, you're in shock. You better listen to Harry and go have a look, Randy said anxiously. Harvey was seriously injured. Harry was about to save these people if Harvey gave up the rescue. Harvey would be sent to the hospital first. Within a moment, the mud washed by the rain will push into the progress they made, which means that Harry's previous efforts are in vain. But if there is an urgent need to save people, Harvey can't leave it alone. In case of a delayed treatment, his legs will be disabled, which is not acceptable to Harry. In the dilemma, June and Millie appear. It took a long time for the three people to come out to participate in the rescue work. Worried about Harry's safety, June asked Millie to come out to look for them, and also asked them to go back to eat to supplement their physical strength. Experienced people all know that if you work in the heavy rain, the consumption of physical strength is several times as much as usual. Even a raincoat or waterproof suit doesn't work. So they came just in time. Here Harry was worried. He couldn't find anyone who would call for help. June, Millie, you two came just in time. Send Harvey to the medical center quickly, cried Harry. Hearing that Harvey was to be sent to the medical center, they both were shocked. Just for a while, Harvey's side has already shed a lot of blood. Mixing with the water on the ground is like forming a stream, which is shocking. My God! What's going on? How can it be like this? Millie exclaimed in surprise. Harry said, Don't worry about what happened first, and see that he goes to the hospital first. Yes. Randy, what are you doing in a daze? Quickly, lift him. Millie nodded in a panic. Harvey was so weak that he almost lost consciousness, but he still grasped Harry's arm tightly and said, Harry, I'm okay. You have to go save people first. Harry frowned, looked at the deep hole just dug out behind him, and thought, Randy, you and Millie take Harvey back to the medical center, and June and I will stay here to save people. Oh, that's all. Randy nodded, then called Millie carefully and lifted Harvey and left here. Harry and June were left alone. Without Harry's command, June picked up a shovel left on the ground and said, Sir, let's hurry to save people. With a sigh, Harry turned and went on to clean up the mud. With the help of June, the stones on the ruins of the building were quickly cleared out, but the collapsed building was made of concrete and a wall had fallen, which would have been lifted by manpower. However, a moment after cleaning up again, Harry was glad to find that there was a hole formed after the collapse because the block of the stones did not make the mud pour in. Trying to drill inside for a while, Harry found that they can go and then twisted the waterproof light on the beginning to go inside. But June grabbed him and said, Sir, it's too dangerous. Let me go. Letting Harry go out to participate in the rescue worried her about his safety, and now Harry even ventures into the collapsed building ruins. How can June agree? Harry spoke, How can I let you put yourself in danger? Without waiting for June to respond, Harry turned and got into the ruins. The people in this house should have better living conditions, and there won't be such a solid house built of reinforced concrete in this town. It seems that it is still a kind of exquisite rural villa. In places like Quick River Town, the Livingston family houses of farmers are brick and tiled structures and even old houses with sheetrock and wooden beams. These two types can't withstand too much impact at all. After the collapse, it's very difficult for the people inside to survive, but the whole wall is made of reinforced concrete, which is different. Although it cannot resist the huge impact of mountain collapse, the reinforcement inside the wall still has a chance to maintain the integrity of the whole wall. Harry groped forward in the dark along the twisted ruins of the structure. Soon the surrounding space became more and more narrow. He can only stoop forward and crawl forward. The light on the top of the head can't let Harry see the surrounding situation clearly in this kind of space full of damaged ruins. He can only climb for a while and stop to listen to other movements around him with a breath hold. If anyone is still alive here, something will be heard. Sure enough, after a while, Harry heard a faint cry. Immediately excited, yelled, People inside! You okay? Don't worry, I came to save you. With that, he followed the direction of the sound and looked for it carefully. The cry disappeared after Harry finished shouting. Harry couldn't help think that he had a hallucination just now. Dad! Mom! A moment later, a louder cry came. Harry finally determined the location of the sound, and his heart was even more urgent. It's a child! Heard the cry is clearly a girl's movement. Harry can't imagine a child suffering from this desperate situation as how to adhere now. In order to let the survivors see the dawn of hope as soon as possible, Harry accelerated his crawling speed. It seemed that the solid walls and the load-bearing columns in the room played a role. After crawling for a while, Harry finally got close to the location of the cry, but the situation in front of him made him feel unhappy again. A fallen wooden door blocked in front of Harry, crying behind the door, but Harry was unable to open the door under normal circumstances. Because the wooden door is now embedded in the collapse of the ruins, Harry tried to push and pull a few times and found that the wooden door was stuck. There was no way to push it open. Although it's the kind of inner door in everyday home, it's not a very thick layer of wood. But Harry doesn't have the right tools in his hand. How can he open the wooden door with only one hand? What's more, he's still lying in the narrow space. Even if he had tools, he would have to work hard. The cry behind the door makes Harry feel more anxious, and what's worse, the cry begins to become weak. The people inside must have been buried underground for a long time, and they're on the edge of the most dangerous in the absence of enough oxygen. Although Harry dug up the buried earth, and the air did not flow in because of the wooden door. "Don't worry, I'll find a way to save you," Harry was shouting outside, trying to give the children inside a little hope of resistance. Just when Harry is so anxious and can't take his head to knock the door open, June comes in from behind because she doesn't trust Harry. "Sir, what's going on inside?" Harry can't blame June for not listening to his own words and coming in. Now she is blocked by a door. When she comes, she can't solve the problem. It doesn't matter if you don't have the right tools. June can remove the metal door of the car by hand. Can a wooden door stop her? "June, you're just in time. There's a child inside, but it's blocked by the door. Hurry up and open it." "Good." June also heard their weak cry in front of her, and without much hesitation, she climbed forward. But the problem comes again. The space here is very narrow. If you want to climb to the front, Harry had to step back first. This time, it is inevitable to delay a lot of time. Now it is urgent to save people, and the most urgent thing is time. "Don't move, sir. I'll try to squeeze through." June's voice suddenly became very low. What Harry couldn't see was that it's dark. Her face was as red as she was about to burn. In the rustling, June rubbed her legs in front of Harry. At this time, they're almost holding each other and feeling each other's breath. Harry is a little intoxicated. In his heart, he thought that June usually looks a little weak, but now he found that she has a lot of meat on her bones. "Come on, sir, step back." June's voice was a little flustered and even more like humming of mosquitoes. Oh. Harry responds and quickly climbs back. It's hard to avoid the friction that makes people's ears red. Fortunately, Harry finally knows that he is saving people now. After retreating to the back for a moment, only a few crackles were heard. The wooden door was directly broken into the pieces by June. "Sir, there are 3 people inside. 2 adults have been dead for a long time. Only 1 little girl fainted. She's still very weak." June's voice came from the front. Harry said, "Take her out and be careful. Don't move too much." "Well, in a narrow space, it's not easy to get a comatose person out. Fortunately, it's a child. If they're adults, we will have to work hard." When June took the girl out and slowly handed her to Harry, they walked out one after another. When it comes to the exit, Harry finds that the little girl in his arms is quiet. He looks down and doesn't know when she wakes up. Facing the outside light, she looked at Harry and whispered, "Big brother, where are my parents?" Harry's nose was sour. The child seems to be less than 10 years old. At such a young age, she suffered such a heavy blow. How can Harry have the heart to tell her that her parents have died in it? As soon as he wanted to tell her, he saw that the child's eyes were closed and she was in a coma. Although the situation was not good, Harry was relieved. Finally, there was no need to think of any excuse to coax her. For a while, Harry really doesn't know how to explain to her. June came out and saw that the baby in his arms. She asked, "Sir, do you want to get the 2 dead adults out?" Harry shook his head and said, "Take care of the living first. The child is very weak. We have to send her to the medical center to have a look. Don't delay, or she'll have a big problem later." "All right." June nodded, turned around, took out a raincoat from one side of the kit, put it on the little girl, and walked away with Harry. The original hospital in Quick River Town has long been buried. Now the medical center is built on a safer hillside for temporary relief. Under the leadership of Dr. Laz, the surviving medical staff in the town are busy rescuing the wounded without touching the ground. At present, this medical center is a camp built by a large tent brought by Harvey. Although the capacity is quite large, there are dozens more people that need to be treated. This capacity is not enough. However, we can only let the seriously injured live in tents, while the slightly injured make do with staying in the temporary plastic shed outside. After Harry came out, he saw a flustered situation here. Because there were too many people wounded and too few medical staff, many of them could not be taken care of at all. After seeing the situation, Harry was worried. He didn't know if Harvey had been properly resettled here. Dr. Lass, I just rescued a child. The situation is not very good. Please, have a look first." Harry saw Dr. Lass passing by in a hurry, so he quickly grabbed him. Originally, Dr. Lass was so busy that he was almost dizzy. Now he was suddenly held by someone who he couldn't help but want to get angry. But when he saw it was Harry, how dare he get angry? "Mr. Parker, show them to me quickly," Dr. Lass said softly. Two people came to an emergency tent. Just a simple look. Opened their eyelids with a small light. Dr. Lass frowned and locked up. "What's the situation?" Harry said. Dr. Lass shook his head and said, "It's very serious. She hit her head and lost a lot of blood. In addition, the brain damage caused by long-term hypoxia is very serious. If it is not treated in time, will soon change from coma to shock, and there's a risk of death." Harry said urgently, "Then you had to save her quickly." Dr. Lass immediately wry a smile. "Mr. Parker, you have to see that we are stretched thin, and there's nothing we can do for her here. You have to take her to the hospital downtown." And he took out his set of portable oxygen equipment and put it on the child, saying, "I'll give her some oxygen first to ensure that the situation will not worsen, but I still have to send her out as soon as possible." The situation is like this, and Harry's no longer talking nonsense. Since he had come into Quick River Town, he can go out again. Now that the child is in critical condition, Harry decides to return to the city as soon as possible. But before he left, he had to ask the situation of Harvey. "Dr. Lass, Harvey was hit in the leg by a stone just now. How is his condition?" Dr. Lass still frowned and said, "I just want to tell you that Harvey's condition is not very good. The wound is very deep and it could hit the bone. We need to have an operation as soon as possible. The conditions here can't treat him. After a long time, the leg will be inoperable and it can't be saved. And now, in this weather, once the infection is serious, it will need to be amputated." Harry glared and said, "It's so serious. I know, thank you." Then he picked up the little girl and went outside. "June, go and find them. Let's go back to the city." As soon as Harry's voice fell, he saw Randy's blundering. "Randy!" Harry raised his hand. "Needless to say, I've learned about the situation from Dr. Lass. Let's hurry back to the city." Randy was stunned for a moment and said, "Okay, I'm going to carry my brother to the car." Then he ran to a tent. Harry and June put the little girl in the car and settled down. Randy and Millie also ran over with Harvey. Seeing a car going to the city, many people around the temporary medical center gathered around. Many of their families also need first aid and need to go to the urban areas with better medical conditions, but now the only car that can move is Harry's. In the face of people's request, Harry looked back at the car. Really can't put the wounded, although in the heart can't bear, but still ruthlessly refused. "Sorry, the car is full, but you don't have to worry too much. When I came, the road began to clear. I think there should be a rescue car coming." Facing a look from hope to disappointment, Harry couldn't bear to look again. He closed the door directly and said to Millie, "Drive fast." BTR Supercross Country engine in a burst of roar immediately turned to the road when driving. Millie's driving skills is the best among several people. The super off-road vehicle in the hands of Millie played an unparalleled performance. The tires tore up the road and were hardly disturbed by the collapsed road. Harry saw a large number of rescue vehicles heading for Quick River Town. Presumably, the road had been restored under rush repair. Harry breathed a sigh of relief. With these new rescues, the wounded in Quick River Town should be taken good care of and treated, which made Harry's sense of guilt a little less. The same as to send people to the city for treatment. Harry chooses people who are closely related to him. After all, it's hard to avoid feeling bad in his heart when his friends are hurt. In fact, the medical center has more serious wounded than Harvey and the little girl. They're all waiting for treatment. Harry can be excused for choosing to take his own people back. When he is approaching the urban area of Washington, his mobile phone is finally connected to the signal. Harry has to inform Sean Livingston of such a big accident. "Sean, Harvey is injured. I'm taking him to the city hospital now. Can you send some medical staff there?" In such a big disaster, the hospital would be full. And now Harry calls Sean Livingston just to let him use his power to mobilize some doctors to treat Harvey. Sure enough, Sean Livingston trembled when he heard that his son was injured. Sean Livingston, who has been wandering for decades, has never seen any big waves. He can calm down when he meets anything, but his son has an accident, which makes him flustered. Harvey, his only son, he will inherit such a big family fortune in the future. What Harry can't see is that the other end of the phone, Sean Livingston is shaking all over. What's the situation of the small army? Is it serious? Harry repeated what Dr. Last told him and then said, I know that the city hospital should be full now, but Harvey's situation can't be delayed. Do you think you can find a way? Hearing Sean Livingston fall into silence, Harry will know this matter is also very difficult to do. It is not impossible for Sean Livingston to force the hospital to take out a few doctors, but the result is that once it is known later, the reputation of the Livingston family will be destroyed. As the current leader of disaster relief, Sean Livingston uses his own privileges for personal gain and gives the green light to his son's medical aid. This kind of thing is to be scolded. On the other hand is the Livingston family's reputation. His own son's life. Sean Livingston was in a dilemma. After a moment of silence, Harry first said, I can't do it. I'll go directly to the airport. My private plane is there. If it's too big, I'll take off and send Harvey to a hospital for treatment. John Livingston sighed deeply and said, Now it seems that it can only be like this. Mr. Parker, Harvey will be handed over to you. The feeling that the Livingston family owes you will be returned 100 times, 1,000 times in the future. In his opinion, money is secondary, and his son's life is more important than anything else. Washington Hospital was nearly crowded by the wounded. Washington Hospital was very crowded by the wounded. Even if he used his privileges, those busy and dizzy doctors could not help him over others who had been seriously injured. On balance, it is most appropriate to send Harvey to a hospital in other places as soon as possible. The nearest hospital close to an airport only takes less than 2 hours to get there by plane. Harry said, Harvey and I are brothers. You don't owe me anything. Sean Livingston said gratefully, Mr. Parker, time is the most important now. I won't say more if I thank you. Now, when you go to the airport, I'll let the doctors and my family rush to take care of you on the way. I'll also contact the airport site to clear a runway for takeoff and landing as soon as possible. With that, they hung up. As the largest family in Washington, the Livingston family had a special doctor. However, private doctors usually stay around just for health maintenance, and there are some minor problems. Although in terms of medical skills, most private doctors are better. Now Harvey's situation cannot be treated by his family's private doctor alone, so he can only choose to go to the hospital. However, it's not all useless. As Sean Livingston said, private doctors can help when on the road, at least to keep Harvey's situation from deteriorating. Of course, the little girl Harry rescued herself also needs professional care. Harry's supercross country turned a direction, no longer toward the city hospital of Washington, but to the other side of Washington towards the airport. Now the traffic environment in Washington had been completely paralyzed, and many roads have been directly submerged by the flood. But Harry's car, relying on the strong performance and unparalleled amphibious ability, directly switches the waiting mode when it encounters water and forcibly rushes through it. The water spray along the way is several meters high and more than 10 meters long. When Harry and his party came to the airport, they just saw its helicopter begin to land. Because there was no such waiting car as Harry's, the people of the Livingston family took off and landed in the heavy rain, and the helicopter sent the doctor. Harvey's girlfriend Carol came with him. She didn't know where Harvey had gone. She didn't even notice Harry left when they went to Quick River Town. Now, after Harvey was injured, he finally couldn't hide from her. After coming down from the helicopter, he ran to Harry's car with rain on his head. He looked anxiously at Harvey, who was in a coma here, with water drops on his face that could not tell whether it was rain or tears. Don't worry. Now the situation is stable. As long as he gets proper treatment, he can recover. Millie comforted. There was water all over the airport. But there is a runway because of the high terrain to avoid being flooded. The only problem is that the distance of the runway is too short. It can only be used by small aircraft such as Harry. Before it reaches the takeoff speed, it will rush outside the runway. June, can you just fly? Harry asked. At this time, June was the only one who could fly a plane. June calculated for a moment, nodded slowly, and said, It should be no problem, sir. Your plane has emergency speed mode, which can shorten the starting distance under the condition of using the engine afterburner. Other commercial aircraft or private aircraft have no engine afterburner function. Only Harry, who has 4 engines, have the performance of a fighter, can greatly improve its own speed using the afterburner. But just like the nitrous oxide acceleration device in racing cars, the afterburner of aircraft engines can't last long. Otherwise, if the fuel consumption is too fast, the service life of the engine will be greatly shortened. After listening to June's words, Harry nodded. Since it can work, there's nothing to say. Let's go. The party directly drove the car to the cabin of the plane, and the airport tower has already planned the route for Harry's plane. In Washington, it's a good thing to say that the only plane that could take off now is Harry's. But out of Washington, you still have to follow the established route. As an international metropolis, there is an endless stream of flights. If you want to jump to the queue, you can't do it without getting in line like everyone else. Fortunately, because of Harry himself, Sean Livingston is not only powerful in Washington, no one in the whole country will not give him face. It's just a matter of his words to adjust the route and insert a team. Harry's large private plane in the rain to use the docking warehouse after turning on the afterburner mode, a brief run, then in the roar of the engines launching the plane into the sky, the heavy rain cannot stop the impact of the most advanced man-made machinery. After flying to a certain height and breaking through the thick clouds in the violent tremor, it turned the aircraft head and flew rapidly towards its destination. Randy in Florida Hospital has already made arrangements. After Harry's plane arrived at Florida Airport, the helicopter for the hospital had been waiting there for a long time. They transferred the girl and Harvey to the helicopter and soon arrived at the hospital. On the way, Harvey was in a coma because he was seriously injured. The little girl rescued by Harry was not in good condition. The personal doctor of the Livingston family said it was a little dangerous. After successfully sending both of them to the emergency room, Harry was relieved. "Sir, you have been busy all the way here. You need to take a rest." June gives Harry a cup of warm water. Harry nodded, sat on the sofa in the waiting area, and drank a little water slowly. At this time, the phone rings. Harry takes it out of his pocket and sees Sean Livingston on the caller ID. He's worried about his son's situation. He can't sit still. In fact, Sean Livingston was really restless. Harvey is the only child in his family. Now his legs are so badly injured. "Sean, we're already in the hospital. Well, you can be rest assured that Harvey is undergoing treatment now. Okay, I will call you soon as there is any progress." Harry comforted Sean Livingston and hung up after a few words. Because of Randy's relationship, Harvey received the best treatment conditions in Florida Hospital. Although both of them were seriously injured, after a consultation with doctors, the results are more gratifying. The president of the hospital came to report to Randy in person. Harry's not as famous as Randy here. The successor of the Banner family has been operating in Florida for many years, and their industry is everywhere. People with such a great identity that come to any hospital get recognized. As the dean of the hospital, he didn't dare to slack off. What's more, he heard that the male patient was the heir of Livingston family, which made him dare not to refuse the request for treatment so urgently. Legs hit by stones, serious fractures in the femurs. If they do not get treated quickly and heal well, the only course of action would be to amputate the legs for fear of necrotic tissue entering the rest of Harvey's body. Therefore, after a diagnosis and a treatment plan, the president of the hospital came to Randy. "Mr. Banner." Randy frowned and said, "What's the matter?" Hearing Randy's inquiry, he immediately said, "Fortunately, he was sent here in time. If you were delayed a little bit more, there would have been nothing we could have done to save his legs." "There won't be any trouble after treatment, will there?" Harry interjected. President Howe shook his head and said, No, don't worry. Dr. Schulister, the world-renowned surgeon, is the chief surgeon that will operate on Harvey. How can he not guarantee his recovery?" Harry has never heard of Dr. Schulister, but Randy knows something about it. Hearing that this great man was a master with the scalpel, his eyes lit up immediately. "Really? Don't lie to me. When will the hospital be able to invite this one?" Randy said with half faith. The president of the hospital bowed and said, "Mr. Banner, give me 10 courage, and I dare not cheat you. It's Dr. Schulister who is in charge of the operation. It's true that our hospital can't invite this great man normally, but there is an international medical exchange meeting at the convention center nearby." Randy thought about it and suddenly said, "Oh, yes, I remember. There is such a thing going on this week." So it's a coincidence that it's also lucky for Harvey. In the name of the exchange meeting, I asked Dr. Schulister to come to the hospital for guidance, and I just caught up with him today," the hospital president said with a smile. "The real issue is how well they can save Harvey's legs. The plane ride may have been fast, but any time after an injury always raised the risk of successful recovery. But now that Dr. Schulister, the world's best surgeon, is here, the situation will be different. Dr. Schulister's level of operation is generally recognized as high. The patients who have been treated by him have basically maintained a high rate of recovery. If Dr. Schulister is in charge, If there is any problem, the hospital president has reason to shirk responsibility. This is the operation plan given by Dr. Schillister. Have a look, Mr. Banner, the hospital president asked. Randy looks at Harry with a question in his eyes. Harry waved his hand and said, "We don't know these words. You should arrange the operation as soon as you can cure them." Randy also nodded his head and said, "Yes, the plan is up to you. You and your staff, as well as Dr. Schillister, know what to do best. As for us, we don't know what any of this means. If it is to save Harvey, then do it. Unless you want to try and fail me on purpose, then it would be easy enough to replace you." The hospital president's cold sweat immediately came out again, thinking that this young man is really not easy to serve. Who dares to guarantee 100% of the treatment? His heart was full of bitterness, but he still had a smile on his face. The hospital president left respectfully and walked out of the waiting room. Randy said, "Dr. Schillister is very famous, but I don't know if he is sure to cure Harvey." Harry doesn't know Dr. Schillister at all, let alone his level of skill. However, professional people have to be asked about professional matters. Harry has a hospital in his name, and Maryland Sanctuary Hospital has the highest level of medical skills in the U.S. If Maryland was not far away for fear of delay, Harry wanted to take them to Maryland. Now, he doesn't know much about the surgeon, so Harry called President Gale of Maryland Sanctuary Hospital. "Ah, sir, are you looking for me? Is there anything I can do for you?" President Gale answered the phone and asked, flattered, a little afraid. Harry hasn't been to the hospital since he bought it. Now a call out of nowhere. It was very odd getting a call from Mr. Parker. "Gale, let me ask you about someone," Harry said. As soon as he heard that he was inquiring, President Gale was relieved. "Who do you want to ask me about?" he said with a smile. "Dr. Schillister is said to be the top surgeon in the world, nicknamed Miracle Hands. Do you know this man?" President Gale said, "I know that Dr. Schillister's medical skill is really great, especially in surgery. The nickname Miracle Hands is not exaggerated at all. Well, sir, why do you want to ask me about him?" Harry nodded and said, "That's good. A friend of mine is injured and is being prepared to have Dr. Schillister perform the operation, so I wanted to know about him first." "Well, sir, you can be rest assured that no one in the world is more accomplished in surgery than Dr. Schillister." "Well, I'm relieved. You're busy. I'll hang up now." "Oh, good." Putting down his mobile phone, Harry said to Randy, "You heard that just now. Harvey is in the best care." Randy nodded happily. Although he knows something about Dr. Schillister's fame, he has never experienced it personally, so he is somewhat suspicious. Now Harry inquired clearly. The heart hanging in his throat wasn't as suffocating. The rest of the feeling will only go away if the operation goes smoothly. After the president of the hospital took back the plan from Harry, he immediately arranged for people to start the operation. Both Harvey and the little girl were in a very serious situation. Although the little girl's injury was more serious than Harvey's, the injury was not very obvious and there was no need for surgery. The most ICU could do for the child was just providing fluid and monitoring the head wound. Harvey had severe trauma and fractures on both legs, so he had to undergo the most careful and thoughtful operation to return to normal. So now Harry and the others, what they are most concerned about is Harvey's operation. The operating room lights up. Randy couldn't sit and walked anxiously at the door. Harry looked at it for a while and felt dizzy. He was dissatisfied and said, "You could stop for a while if you don't feel dizzy. I feel dizzy too." "Well, I'm not at ease." "What could I do if I'm not at ease? Can you help me?" "We just have to watch." Randy sat back, dejected. He added, "You said how can I have been so lucky? If I hadn't been in a daze at the time, I would have been blamed. If it hadn't been for pushing me away, Harvey would not have been seriously injured." Up to now, Randy hasn't recovered from his self-accusations. He hates how he was as stupid as a fool at that time. Harry comforted, "Don't blame yourself too much. No one thought of this kind of thing. I don't think Harvey will say anything about you when he wakes up. Relax." "Alas!" Randy sighed. When Harry saw what he had to say was almost done, he got up and said, "I'll go and see how the child is." "Well, I'll watch here. You go." The little girl rescued from the ruins is now in the intensive care unit. After Harry and June came, they could only look inside through the thick observation window. When a busy voice inside came out, Harry came forward and asked, "Doctor, how is the child now?" The doctor took off the mask and said, "The trauma is not serious, although the head was hit, the bone is okay. We have done a good job in preventing infection and inflammation, but long-term hypoxia may cause some brain damage." Harry was surprised. Brain damage? Is it serious? "It's hard to say. We've done what we could do. It depends on when she can recover, but in my experience, this child is likely to lose part of her memory after waking up." Harry frowned, said thank you to the doctor, and then turned to continue to see the child lying on the bed. This child is thinner than the average child. At this time, the little body is covered with the instrument circuit to detect the physiological state, which looks very distressing. "June, do you think it's good or bad for the child to lose her memory?" Harry asked softly. For a child less than 10 years old, it's hard to bear the shock of losing her parents in a disaster. After all, it's better to keep her innocent and happy than to be immersed in pain and helplessness. The 10-year-old child is already a sensible age. Watching the parents die, this memory is too cruel. Harry thinks it's better to forget. After waiting for a long time without hearing June's response, Harry turns his head strangely, but is surprised to find that June has shed tears. Harry thinks nothing can affect her mood. After all, what June has always shown is that she is always calm and rational. But now June is looking at the little girl inside. Her eyes quietly shed 2 lines of tears. "June?" Harry asked suspiciously. He didn't know why June shed tears. Did she feel sympathy for the girl? Sir, are you talking to me?" June said in a daze. Harry pointed to her eyes and asked, "What's the matter with you?" June raised her hand doubtfully and touched her face, only to find that she didn't know when she was in tears. Looking at the teardrop on her finger, June said, "I don't know why. I just feel a little uncomfortable when I see the child now." After seeing June for a long time, Harry turned around without saying anything. He understood why June shed tears. Most likely it was the experience of a little girl, which also happened to be June a long time ago. The elite guardians cultivated by the Parker family are orphans from all over the world. They lost their parents when they were young. When they were brought to the Parker family, they trained and taught corresponding knowledge at the same time. When they grew up, they were arranged with family members just like June. June's life experience has never been mentioned to Harry, and Harry has never taken the initiative to ask. When Nate arranged June to guard Harry, he had already given him June's information. Harry read it and burned it because June's past was 10 times more miserable than that of the little girl now. Now that this little girl reminds June of the past hidden in her heart, Harry decides not to continue this topic so that she won't be sadder. After staying in the intensive care unit for a while, Harry and June come out, ready to go to Harvey's operating room. On the way, June, who had been silent, suddenly asked, "Sir, what are you going to do when this little girl wakes up?" Harry was quiet for a while. "I hadn't really given it much thought. I was more concerned with her safety." Harry really hasn't thought about how to arrange for the child after she was cured. She lost her parents in the disaster and didn't know if there are any other relatives to rely on. If not, it would be a helpless orphan. "Do you have any ideas?" Harry inquired. June thought for a long time and said in embarrassment, "If this child can't find a relative, can you give her to me, sir?" Harry didn't expect that June, who always looked very indifferent, had such a maternal side. He said with a smile, "Since you're willing, what's wrong with it? But you're not married. Do you know how to raise a child? I think it's better for us to raise her with someone together." As soon as he said that, he immediately made June blush. Harry suddenly realized that she was a little ambiguous and scratched her nose with a smile. When they came to Harvey's operating room, they heard a loud argument before they got close. Harry and June looked at each other. They had the same idea. Because of Randy, the operating room provided by the hospital for Harvey was not ordinary. Usually when people come to see a doctor and need surgery, they all queue up in the most out-of-the-way room. The chief surgeons are also routine doctors in some hospitals. The conditions are not bad, but they're not very good. Now, Harvey's operating room, generally speaking, the hospital was not open to the public. Only those with unusual status can use it. Just like today, the patients brought by the heir of the Banner family deserve the attention of the hospital. What's more, the patient was still the heir of the Livingston family, so they can't wait. This society was still very realistic. Although it advocates equality for all, it was often empty talk. If people with noble status are allowed to register and wait in line like ordinary patients, the hospital will not be able to operate. So there are no unrelated people here, and ordinary people outside can't come here. But now that the noise was coming, something must have happened. Considering that Harvey's operation should still be in progress, Harry and June rushed to see what happened. Turned around the corner, you could see a young man dressed in luxury and several of his subordinates are confronting Randy loudly. "Today I have to see Dr. Schillister, and my grandfather's operation has to be done by him. I see who dares to stop me," said the young man fiercely. Randy disdains to say, "Your grandfather? My friend still needs his surgery and was being operated on as we speak. Do you think you could just hop in and stop him?" "You think I'm afraid of you? Give me Dr. Schillister." With a wave of the young man's hand, several of his subordinates immediately prepared to break through. How can Harry allow others to disturb Harvey's operation? He immediately yelled, "I see who dares to go in." Those people didn't expect that there would still be people behind them. They were all startled by Harry's loud drink and turned around one after another. The man in luxurious clothes hung his eyes and asked, "Who are you?" Harry didn't reply angrily. "Someone you should respect." "How dare you scold my boss?" A man next to him couldn't help waving his fist and rushed up to fight Harry. To this kind of action, Harry's eyes didn't blink and his feet didn't move. After that, June suddenly kicked the man to the ceiling and fell down. This foot shocked the whole audience and no one else dared to act rashly. Harry's temper was good at ordinary times. He won't blush with others easily. But today this man really provoked him and he did too much. Is the operating room under operation free to rush? If you don't respect others, the consequences of rushing are likely to make Harvey lose his life. How could anyone be so selfish and only care about themselves? Everyone knew that a surgery took time and concentration, and any interruptions would be very dangerous for the patient. "You jumped out here again? I said that Dr. Schillister has to stop the operation and follow me. Anyone who dares to stop me will have trouble with me. You can't afford the consequences." Harry snorted coldly. "It's okay for you to find Dr. Schillister, and I won't stop you, but you have to wait until this operation is completed. Otherwise, I don't care who you are. If you dare to break through, you'll have a serious issue." "Okay, you can. You are the first person who dares to be so arrogant in front of me. I hope you can be so tough later. Remember my name. I'm Garrett Laurel. Let's go." The man named Garrett Laurel stares at Harry. After a moment, he waves to some of his subordinates and leaves with them. It's really puzzling that any cat or dog dares to look for trouble. Harry shook his head and said, Randy came over and said, "Harry, that man just now was not a cat and dog. He was from the Laurel family, one of the 4 big families in the capital." At first, Randy didn't know who this person was, but he didn't get on the number until he had just given his name. Laurel family, one of the 4 big families in the capital. They do have an arrogant capital. Just not to find the right person, the presence of Randy and Harry are not afraid of what hi-ho. It's also the other 4 families in the capital. The heir lost all his men in the hands of Harry. Harry didn't care. "I doubt he's dangerous. Still, let me wait and see. Then I'll wait here to see what other tricks he has." Randy said, "I think it's better to be cautious. After all, Harvey was undergoing surgery. We must not let people disturb him." Harry nodded and said, "Don't worry, I'm not the one who belittles the enemy. I'll make the right arrangements." Then he took out his mobile phone and called. On Moon Island, George and the people from Wolfguard were in charge of the inspection work of the whole island, while acting as mass actors for the film crew. At this time, he received Harry's call. Harry has been away for several days. They don't know what happened in Washington. In Moon Island, the infrastructure was not complete, just like being isolated from the world. They can't know about the disaster situation in Washington through the internet and TV. Of course, they didn't know that Harry risked their lives to participate in the rescue, and Harvey was seriously injured. Now that Harry has called, George thinks it's Harry who has come back and wants to find them to take someone to pick up the plane. "Sir, have you returned yet?" "Well, I'm in building 3 of the hospital now. You immediately mobilize some people to control the whole building. Don't let any flies in, Harry said. George was startled. The hospital? Sir, you... It's Harvey who was injured. Don't ask any more about this. Now hurry up and bring all the people here. You could take a few helicopters and the others by boat. Yes, I'll be right there. George finished, hung up the phone, and immediately summoned the staff. In the hospital, after seeing Harry hang up the phone, Randy asked, There's no need to stir up the masses. After all, this was Florida, not the territory of the 4 families in the capital. Harry said, Just in case, Harvey's operation time can't be short. In the middle of this, we must ensure that everything was safe. Randy said, That's right. I'll also mobilize people to come here. Then he went to make a phone call. On the Florida side, Randy's stronghold was more convenient than Harry's if he wants to gather people. But after all, it was George. They came faster by helicopter. Not long after they contacted, Harry's helicopter landed on the apron of the hospital. George, with 7 members of the Wolf Guard, is armed to find Harry. Sir, I brought people here, and a lot of them are coming back by boat. Harry nodded, pointed to the operating room, and said, Harvey's in the operation room, but he won't be done for a while. Your task is to not let anyone disturb during the operation. Yes, I see. Harry found his men here, and Garrett, who was not long away, also gathering his men. He was not far away, just in the hotel next to the hotel. Garrett has to rush into the operating room to find Dr. Schulister because his grandfather was in urgent need of an operation. But because of his old age, the disease was not small. Although the capital has the best medical conditions in the country, the medical team responsible for his grandfather was not sure about the operation. After Garrett's inquiry, some people in the medical team said that Dr. Schulister was needed to operate in order to have the possibility of success. So when he heard that Dr. Schulister had come to attend the International Medical Exchange meeting, he directly took a private plane to find someone. Who knows? People are found, but Dr. Schulister was undergoing surgery. If you want to take people back, you have to wait for the operation to be completed. How can you have the patience to wait? When you come here, you're in a hurry. You don't want to delay every minute. After Harry stopped him from rushing into the operating room, Garrett saw that none of his 5 subordinates was June's opponent. The main reason was that the kick that kicked the man to the ceiling was really frightening and it scared him to the hairs. At that time, it was impossible to take Dr. Schulister away without suffering losses. Garrett, who had always been used to his arrogance, took the initiative to admit his advice. It's not too late to take people out of the hospital and call in people who can fight. As for whether he was willing to go to the capital with Garrett after finding Dr. Schulister, it was not in Garrett's consideration at all. Although he was a famous doctor in the world, he was an only doctor. A man like Garrett did not care if Dr. Schulister wanted to go with him or not. Garrett was not in his hometown. The hospital was the only one that could help his grandfather. He had not set up enough of his infrastructure to do what he wanted. But now Garrett has money. As long as he throws out a lot of money, he will not worry about finding someone who can beat the men who pushed him away. After contacting several local leaders, they heard his proposal and could not refuse. Soon, hundreds of people gathered for Garrett. Mr. Laurel, these people have come to you. They are trained to fight. They can play hard at the key time. They all meet your requirements. A snakehead said in front of Garrett. Well, good, it's your hard work. Garrett looked at the hundreds of fierce-looking people in front of him and nodded with satisfaction. Then he pushed a box in front of him to the snakehead, which was full of money after opening. All of a sudden, the white money dazzled the snake's eyes and made him smile. Mr. Laurel is generous, but I don't respect him, the snakehead said with a smile and dragged the box into his arms. But Garrett was pressed down. Wait! The snakehead was stunned for a moment and said, Don't worry, Mr. Laurel. The matter must be done for you. These people are all on your side. They just go to the hospital to bring out their people. It's very simple. That's good. When things are done, you can take the money and feel at ease. But if you can't do it well, you won't have a better life, you know. I know. I understand very well. Mr. Laurel can rest assured. The snake's head patted his chest and assured. It took a little time to find the snakehead and recruit so many people according to its requirements of Garrett's. Because Garrett has recognized Randy, and as a power holder of the Banner family in Florida, Garrett dares to not underestimate him. Although he was not afraid of direct conflict with him, this was not his territory after all, and Randy's power was very stable after many years of operation. If you want to find someone who dares to fight against Randy, you can only find someone who lives to fight and has done so for a while. As for Harry, Garrett didn't know him, but he didn't take it seriously. Even if he was estimated to be high, the left and right are only people of the same level as Randy. One more or one more. Anyway, the purpose of Garrett was to take Dr. Schulister back to the capital. As for offending a few people, he was no longer thinking about it. He thought that Harry was at most a rich young man of the Banner family, but what Garrett didn't expect was that he seriously underestimated Harry's identity. After counting all the people, Garrett brings them into the hospital from the hotel nearby. This time, he was quite sure to bring Dr. Schulister out. But in his eyes, only his grandfather's life was the most important and other people don't matter. Dr. Schulister will be taken away. Garrett doesn't care whether the person undergoing the operation was alive or dead. Just after arranging all of this, George saw hundreds of unidentified people coming from the window downstairs. "Sir, those people." George looks at Harry and asks. Harry nodded and said, "It should be them. They're the ones who are here to make trouble. Keep them outside to ensure the smooth operation." "Yes, I see." George then turned to order the few men Harry had brought with him to go and block the door. With the little number of people George had on hand, he couldn't keep so many people out of the building. Because there are too many entrances and exits in the hospital building, only a few people can't take care of it completely. Garrett takes hundreds of people who are temporarily employed to come upstairs. When he sees that Harry has only a few subordinates here, he feels proud. Garrett has a sneer on his face. "Ah, you dare to block me now?" Randy couldn't help but say, "You're so very arrogant. This is not the place where you can act recklessly." Garrett laughed and said, "Randy, you really think this was your territory? Even if it was, as long as I say one word here, there are many people who want to work for me." Garrett was not angry, but he said complacently, "I think you're hard to work with. If you don't give me Dr. Schulister, do you expect 7 or 8 people to stop me?" He didn't know Harry. He thought that George was under Randy's hands. He immediately felt funny. It was clear that he has told his identity. Randy, one of the 4 families in the capital, doesn't even mean to pay any attention to it. Isn't he looking for guilt? Now there are hundreds of people under Garrett, but Randy has only 7 or 8 people. How can they stop him? As for June, in the beginning, she did give Garrett a surprise, but she didn't think it was too difficult. No matter how fierce it is, just one person, Garrett, relying on his overwhelming advantage in the number of people, doesn't pay attention to June at all. These hundreds of employed people are capable. They all caused trouble in other places and came to this town for refuge. Just to look at the people, it was obvious that a lot of these men were fugitives trying to stay low. Worried that once the conflict started and a few George's men were engaged, it would leave Harry completely vulnerable. Then in the middle of the confrontation, slowly back to the side of Harry to prevent someone from storming up to Harry. When Garrett sees this behind the scenes, he becomes more complacent. Even his subordinates are counseled. What else can stop him from taking Dr. Schulister? Then he burst out laughing. "Look at you now. What other means can stop me? There was no better end than to watch you get beat." Randy said in a low voice, "Even if you succeed now, aren't you afraid that my people will retaliate against you?" Garrett said, "Well, don't you think I'm a fool? My only purpose was to take Dr. Schulister away now. When I get back to the capital, you want to take revenge on me? You can use whatever means you want to use." That's why he acted so recklessly. Randy's identity was exactly the same as that of him, but he was still a little scared outside of his hometown. But it doesn't matter if he returns to his own home in the capital. Randy suddenly lost his temper. If he went to the capital to look for revenge, he really had no confidence. Garrett didn't want to talk nonsense with Randy after he finished his words. He waved his hand and said, "Go to the operating room and bring the doctor out for me." "I see. Who dares?" Harry gave a loud shout. George immediately stepped forward and stopped the people who were ready to rush. Garrett was not happy and said, "Just now I wonder which kind of man you are. You should stop me. Don't you see what the situation was now? I have a large number of people." Harry said with a sneer, "I really want you to understand. You can have Dr. Schulister after he is finished operating on my friend. I won't stop you. My problem is that you are going to try to take him in the middle of the operation." Garrett said impatiently, "My grandfather was still waiting in the capital for emergency treatment. How can I wait for your operation?" Harvey's girlfriend, Carol, never made a sound, but now she can't help saying, "You are too much. Dr. Schillister asked you to leave till he was done. What about the people who are undergoing surgery? You are too selfish." Garrett disdains to say, "Selfish? You're right, I'm selfish. What can you do with me?" Millie said, "What a shame. Your grandfather's life was important, but my friend's life is not." Garrett sniffed. "What's the value of the life of a garbage? Only my grandfather's life was the most precious. Now there are many people with me. If you fight with me, you'd best get out of my sight." And then he waved his hand and said, "Go in. Anyone who dares to stop me will be fought. You'll be responsible if anything happens to me. Those who brought Dr. Schillister out will be rewarded with $2 million. Originally, the group of people hired by Garrett were a group of outlaws. Now Garrett talks about what they have to do. He not only doesn't have to be responsible for killing people, but also can get a lot of money. The fugitive men immediately turned red and began to rush in. George and several guards lined up to stop these men. Fortunately, they were in the corridor, and they couldn't give full play to the advantage of a large number of people. If they were in the open space, even if George had a lot of skills, they would be hard to beat with 2 fists and 4 hands. Although they stopped people, they were not optimistic. Hundreds of people rushed in, one after another. George not only fought back, but also had to fight back. They could hold on for a while, but they couldn't hold on for a long time. At this time, a door on one side of the operating room opened, and the doctor came out. Seeing the chaotic scene, he was shocked and said, "Well, what's the matter?" Harry said, "Someone has come to make trouble. Was it okay inside?" The doctor said, "Dr. Schillister heard the noise outside in the operating room, and he told me to come out to have a look. Now the operation is going on in the most important time. Don't let people disturb him." Harry nodded and said, "I know. Don't worry. I'll deal with these people. I promise it won't affect the operation." The doctor looked at the chaotic situation of fists and kicks in the corridor. He trembled a little in his heart and said, "It's best to take these people out. They don't look like good people one by one. How can they come here to make trouble?" Then he turned back to the operating room. Looking at the chaos in front of Harry, he picked up the corner of his mouth and said, "It'll be over soon." George's several people really have the means. In the face of the collision of hundreds of people, they can not only stop them, but they can deal with a lot of them with ease. In less than 1 or 2 minutes, the first few people who rushed to the front had already been knocked down by George. Despite Garrett bringing a lot of people, they were not as proficient as George and his men. George was much stronger, but the problem was any extended conflict will tire him and his men out. Slowly, George's physical strength was not enough, and their movements became slower. Garrett, who was in control, stands in the crowd and shouts to Harry with pride, "How about it? Don't you give up now. My people will rush in later, but they can't spare you." Harry said with a sneer, "Do you think you will win?" Garrett said with a smile, "Isn't it how this was playing out? Now you're surrounded by me and blocked in the road of death. If you want to avoid suffering, come and kowtow to me. Maybe I'll be merciful and spare you." Harry shook his head with a smile, pointed to the end of the corridor and the window, and said, "Before you say this, you should look outside." "What are you looking at?" Garrett said, subconsciously looking in the direction that Harry pointed to and swearing. How can it be? Who are these people and when did they come here?" Garrett said in disbelief, and his face was even more frightened and scared. I don't know when, but his back was full of people, blocking the whole corridor. This was not frightening. What's more frightening was that these people appear quietly. They are tough in shape, oppressive in eyes, and well-trained in uniform. Garrett's rough estimation made him feel a little chilly. I'm afraid there are thousands of these people. The small square downstairs was full of people. "Well, these are all your people?" Garrett's neck was rusty. He turns to Harry and asks, "Do you dare to rush into the operating room now?" Harry did not answer directly, but asked in reverse. The people who arrived in time at the critical time were not only Harry's own, but also Randy's people who protected his industries in Florida. Harry's men came slowly because they had a long way to go. The reason why they arrived at the same time was that Randy's men were not well trained. In addition, it was distributed all over Florida, so it takes a lot of time to gather. Fortunately, the arrival was timely and did not make Garrett succeed. Now the scene was reversed. It was no longer George and his men who were pinned, but Garrett and his men. Looking at these new arrivals, Garrett's heart trembled. You don't have to think about it to know that you don't have a chance to win at all. You don't have to say how many people you have. On the other hand, you are well trained, and on the other hand, you're a mob hired by money. You don't have to think about who wins or who loses. Although Randy's subordinates are not as elite as Harry's guards, after a quick weighing, Garrett had to admit it. In the current situation, he can't take Dr. Schulister away at all. If he insists on continuing the conflict, it will be his own fault. Randy was the successor of the Banner family in Florida, but he was not afraid of the power of the High family in the capital like ordinary people. Okay, I'll give up. Dr. Schulister, I'm not in a hurry to take you away. I'll wait until the operation is finished. Garrett immediately raised his hand. Seeing that the situation was stronger than others, Harry has to admit that Garrett was really good. He said with a smile, "You are very good at looking at the situation. It's not difficult for me to let all your people get out of the hospital." Okay, that's okay. There's no way to grab people. It's useless to keep these hired people. It's time to disband them. But these hired outlaws are not happy. They dare not vent their anger on Harry. After all, thousands of people are waiting here now, but they're okay with Garrett. Some people said, "Boss, before I came here, I agreed that I would help you with the work today, and you would give each person $10,000. Now, although the work has not been completed, you can't blame us for not doing our best. Was the service fee settled?" "Yeah, we're not to blame for not doing things, but we still have to have money." "We won't go without money." "Money first." "Here's the money." Garrett did not expect that the people he brought with him were so noisy at this time. Originally, he didn't want to give money. He didn't dare to ask for money even if he didn't do it well. When did he make so much money? But looking at Harry's bad complexion, Garrett can only bear it. He can't help it. These people are smart and ghost-like. Now that the conflict was over, they openly asked for money. Without giving any money, the only person that would end up being beat would be himself. Garrett held back his anger and called his entourage. He gave everyone $10,000 in cash, which sent everyone away. Now that it was over, Garrett was out a lot of money, and he had not gotten the doctor to treat his grandfather. Even if he was the heir of the Laurel family, he doesn't care about the money, but it doesn't mean that Garrett likes to spend the money wrongly and take the money to get away with his mistakes. But he can't help it. Today, he can only admit defeat. With a few of his crew, Garrett was dejected and ready to leave. Harry gave a look, showed his hands to stop him. Garrett suddenly turned around and asked, "Why are you stopping me? I disband my people. Don't you want to let me go?" Harry said with a smile, "Those are just errand boys. I have no time to chat with them. You are the mastermind. I have to have a good talk with you." Garrett asked carefully, Talk about..." Harry waved. "Come here." When Garrett came cautiously, Harry put him on the chair beside the corridor. He said, "You're done with your accounts, and it's time for us to do the same, isn't it?" Garrett wanted to struggle to stand up, but when he saw those people around him who had bad eyes, he no longer had the mind to resist. Harry shook his head and said with a smile, "We can't stop him. Although he has a bad temper, his purpose was not bad. It's always for his grandfather to ask a doctor. Since we're finished here, we can't stop him." Randy said, "Harry was kind-hearted. If I were you, I would have detained him and said nothing to him." Harry laughed and said nothing more. He waved to George and said, "I'll give you $20 million. You could buy some materials for disaster relief in Washington. Take 500 people to Washington and give them to Mr. Sean Livingston. Stay there for a few days to see if there are any places where you need to contribute." George was not ambiguous at all. "Yes, sir. I will do it right away." Harry didn't intend to keep $20 million in his own hands. Neither he nor Randy are short of money, but Washington needs it. With the worst of the disaster in the past, Washington's side will usher in the most difficult situation. Because the flood caused countless people to be displaced, waiting to receive living materials. Clean water, food, shelter, bedding, clothing, and medicine are all needed. Harry was not ready to go there in person, but it's okay to leave things to his own hands. These people are loyal to Harry, and they are very relieved to be given a job. After transferring the money to George's account after giving orders, Harry called Sean Livingston. "Harry, how's the operation going?" As soon as the phone rings, Sean Livingston answers it immediately. It seems that he was waiting for Harry's call. Harry said with a smile, "Sean, don't worry. The operation went well. We had the best surgeon in the world come in and perform the operation." Harvey is resting now and will need to recover for a while." Sean Livingston then put down his suspended heart and said, "Then I can be relieved. I haven't even had a drink of water these few hours. I'm afraid that there would be something wrong with Harvey. Now I can be at ease." Harry said, "Sean, don't worry too much. Harvey has me and Randy to take care of him. You can be rest assured." "Oh, Harry, thank you so much for helping my family. I really don't know how to return the debt." Harry said with a smile, "This is what I should do. I won't go there in Washington, but I've sent 500 men with materials to go there. I'm sending them to you so you can give them orders on what they need to do." "Okay then, I'll let you go so I can prepare." John Livingston added some words of gratitude and ended the call with Harry. He can't refuse Harry's kindness. The situation in Washington was a mess. There are so many people in need of help that it was not enough to help them. In addition, there was a great shortage of goods and materials, and there are always landslides and congestions on the roads from the outside world. Fortunately, Harry's idea had an effect. In order to get the Jade Cabbage, the stars in the entertainment circle really tried their best to help them find help outside. Now, almost the whole nation has been mobilized to help Washington. It's just a long way to go, and many relief groups are also gathering funds and materials. For a while and a half, they can't reach Washington. Millie and Randy admire Harry for giving $20 million to help Washington. Millie said to Randy, "Do you see that? Learn a little. Harry's way of doing things was much better than yours." Randy was a little unconvinced when he was taught by his own women. He whispered, "What's the matter? It's not that I haven't done this kind of thing before." Before, he also blackmailed Kiss Holiday into giving him $30 million, which was $10 million more than Harry's. Millie wrung his ears angrily and said, "Why you don't agree? Do you think I shouldn't talk about you?" Looking at the way they flirt, Harry smiles and doesn't intend to disturb their warmth. He tells June to let the members of the Wolf Guard gather in the hospital return to Moon Island. Now that everything was done, there was no need for these people to stay here. Because the scene was a little big, it attracted a lot of people's attention. Others don't know what happened. At that time, rumors were all around. Some people thought that there was a terrorist attack here. The president of the hospital was the most scared. Originally, after Harvey's operation was arranged, he was dealing with his work in other parts of the hospital. Not long after that, an assistant came to report in a panic saying that a large number of people with unknown origins appeared in the hospital. When they found out where these people were, President was scared to death. It was actually on the floor where Harvey was having his operation. This was the end of the world. In case these people disturbed the operation and caused Harvey to get hurt, no doubt would the president of the hospital be fired. With the security of the hospital rushing to get to Harvey, they are blocked by Harry's men. This put the president on edge as he had been told what was happening beforehand. The president knew the order from Harry. That is, no one was allowed to enter the building. Even a fly can't fly in. Of course, the president was not allowed to enter. Even the dozens of security guards, he didn't have much confidence. The security guards in the hospital didn't have much fighting power. In the face of thousands of guards, they were outmatched in every way. In the face of so many fierce elite guards, the hospital president was really scared. The president was a little relieved. He came upstairs to see if there was anything wrong with the operation on Harvey's side. When he saw that they were still well, a big stone fell to the ground in President's heart. "What was that, Mr. Parker?" "Oh, nothing. You could be rest assured." President thought, how could it be all right? There must have been a big event up here just now, but Harry didn't explain it to him. He couldn't help but be in the dark. "Is the operation going well, Dr. Schulister?" Looking at the door of the operating room that had been opened, President asked. Harry shook his head and said with a smile, "We can't stop him. Although he has a bad temper, his purpose was not bad. It's always for his grandfather to ask a doctor. Since we're finished here, we can't stop him." Randy said, "Harry was kind-hearted. If I were you, I would have detained him and said nothing to him." Harry laughed and said nothing more. He waved to George and said, "I'll give you $20 million. You could buy some materials for disaster relief in Washington. Take 500 people to Washington and give them to Mr. Sean Livingston. Stay there for a few days to see if there are any places where you need to contribute." George was not ambiguous at all. "Yes, sir, I will do it right away." Harry didn't intend to keep $20 million in his own hands. Neither he nor Randy are short of money, but Washington needs it. With the worst of the disaster in the past, Washington's side will usher in the most difficult situation. Because the flood caused countless people to be displaced, waiting to receive living materials. Clean water, food, shelter, bedding, clothing, and medicine are all needed. Harry was not ready to go there in person, but it's okay to leave things to his own hands. These people are loyal to Harry, and they are very relieved to be given a job. After transferring the money to George's account after giving orders, Harry calls Sean Livingston. "Harry, how's the operation going?" As soon as the phone rings, Sean Livingston answers it immediately. It seems that he was waiting for Harry's call. Harry said with a smile, "Sean, don't worry. The operation went well. We had the best surgeon in the world come in and perform the operation. Harvey is resting now and will need to recover for a while." Sean Livingston then put down his suspended heart and said, "Then I can be relieved. I haven't even had a drink of water these few hours. I'm afraid that there would be something wrong with Harvey. Now I can be at ease." Harry said, "Sean, don't worry too much. Harvey has me and Randy to take care of him. You can be rest assured." "Oh, Harry, thank you so much for helping my family. I really don't know how to return the debt." Harry said with a smile, "This is what I should do. I won't go there in Washington, but I've sent 500 men with materials to go there. I'm sending them to you so you can give them orders on what they need to do." "Okay then, I'll let you go so I can prepare." Sean Livingston added some words of gratitude and ended the call with Harry. He can't refuse Harry's kindness. The situation in Washington was a mess. There are so many people in need of help that it was not enough to help them. In addition, there was a great shortage of goods and materials, and there are always landslides and congestions on the roads from the outside world. Fortunately, Harry's idea had an effect. In order to get the Jade Cabbage, the stars in the entertainment circle really tried their best to help them find help outside. Now, almost the whole nation has been mobilized to help Washington. It's just a long way to go, and many relief groups are also gathering funds and materials. For a while and a half, they can't reach Washington. Millie and Randy admire Harry for giving $20 million to help Washington. Millie said to Randy, "Do you see that? Learn a little. Harry's way of doing things was much better than yours." Randy was a little unconvinced when he was taught by his own women. He whispered, "What's the matter? It's not that I haven't done this kind of thing before." Before, he also blackmailed Kiss Holiday into giving him $30 million, which was $10 million more than Harry's. Millie wrung his ears angrily and said, "Why you don't agree? Do you think I shouldn't talk about you?" Looking at the way they flirt, Harry smiles and doesn't intend to disturb their warmth. He tells June to let the members of the Wolf Guard gather in the hospital return to Moon Island. Now that everything was done, there was no need for these people to stay here. Because the scene was a little big, it attracted a lot of people's attention. Others don't know what happened. At that time, rumors were all around. Some people thought that there was a terrorist attack here. The president of the hospital was the most scared. Originally, after Harvey's operation was arranged, he was dealing with his work in other parts of the hospital. Not long after that, an assistant came to report in a panic saying that a large number of people with unknown origins appeared in the hospital. When they found out where these people were, President was scared to death. It was actually on the floor where Harvey was having his operation. This was the end of the world. In case these people disturbed the operation and caused Harvey to get hurt, no doubt would the president of the hospital be fired. With the security of the hospital rushing to get to Harvey, they are blocked by Harry's men. This put the president on edge as he had been told what was happening beforehand. The president knew the order from Harry. That is, no one was allowed to enter the building. Even a fly can't fly in. Of course, the president was not allowed to enter. Even the dozens of security guards, he didn't have much confidence. The security guards in the hospital didn't have much fighting power. In the face of thousands of guards, they were outmatched in every way. In the face of so many fierce elite guards, the hospital president was really scared. The president was a little relieved. He came upstairs to see if there was anything wrong with the operation on Harvey's side. When he saw that they were still well, a big stone fell to the ground in President's heart. "What was that, Mr. Parker?" "Oh, nothing. You could be rest assured." President thought, how could it be all right? There must have been a big event up here just now, but Harry didn't explain it to him. He couldn't help but be in the dark. "Is the operation going well, Dr. Schulister?" Looking at the door of the operating room that had been opened, President asked. What the president was most worried about was what happened to Harvey in his hospital. Once something happened, he couldn't afford the consequences. Now everyone was gone and the door of the operating room was open, but there was no Dr. Schulister, who was the chief surgeon of the operation. The president thinks something must have happened. But fortunately, Harry told him that the operation went well and that the head of the hospital was relieved. But Harry's next words made his heart hang again. Dr. Schulister has gone to the Capitol. President almost jumped up in fright. What? He went to the Capitol? Why didn't he say he went to the Capitol? Harry said, You can contact Dr. Schulister alone about this. He went to the Capitol to operate on a patient. With that, Harry waved his hand and left. Harry had no friendship with the president. There was no need to explain it to him in detail. Moreover, Dr. Schulister was willing to follow Garrett to the Capitol. It's hard for Harry to say anything from the perspective of a third party. Looking at Harry's back, the president scratched his head in wonder. Dr. Schulister had made great efforts to invite him. Now people are running to the Capitol without any explanation. This made the president confused, and he could only take out his mobile phone to contact Dr. Schulister himself. Harry came to Harvey's ward with the doctors and nurses. Because of the anesthetic effect, Harvey was still sleeping. However, post-operative examinations showed that everything was good with no adverse reactions. It was a relief to them. Randy was afraid and said, Thanks to Dr. Schulister, I was really afraid that Harvey would not be able to stand up in the future. Yes, doctor, how many days does it take for his condition to return to normal? Randy nodded busily and asked the doctor who was fiddling with the instrument. The doctor replied, Injuries like this are not something that can be healed overnight. Damage like that takes weeks or months to properly heal. Most likely, he will be bedridden for half a year, if not more. Randy was surprised and said, What? Why will it take such a long time? How can I take care of him during this time? The doctor spread his hand and said helplessly, This was not my responsibility. There are special nursing staff in the hospital. If you are worried, you can talk to them. Harvey's girlfriend, Carol, said, It's okay. I'll take care of him during his hospitalization. We don't have to worry. Harry said, How can you take care of him? Besides, you still have to go to school. You can't stay in the hospital all the time. You better find some reliable professional nurse. Randy jumped up and said, I'll take care of this. How can 1 or 2 be enough? Let's get 7 or 8 of them first. Harry shook his head and laughed. As soon as he was about to say something, a nurse ran over and yelled, Who's Mr. Parker? I am. What's the matter? Harry asked. The little girl you brought has awakened, said the nurse. Harry said, Take me to her to have a look. Harry had already agreed with the nurses in the intensive care unit that if the little girl woke up, that they would be informed immediately. Originally, he thought that she would be in a coma for a few days, but they didn't expect her to wake up so soon. Harry ran out of Harvey's ward. June had a meal and then ran out too. Randy and Millie looked at each other for a while, but Carol could see things. He said, Go have a look. I'll just stay here. Randy nodded. Millie sniffed. It's very kind of you to say that you are proud of your contribution. If it wasn't for your involvement, could Harvey have been so seriously injured? Randy had no face when he was refuted. He said with a smile, Well, this was an accident. Carol said with a smile, Well, you two go quickly. In the intensive care unit, Juniper, who had just passed her 10th birthday, opened her eyes with fear and loss. After slowly adapting to the white light in the room, she looked around and found that it was a strange place, and her fear came back to her heart. Oh, where am I, big brother? Juniper whispered. In her chaotic memory, the only thing she can remember was the cake filled with candles and the collapsed house in the loud noise, and the narrow darkness in which she could not see her fingers, and the unspeakable darkness and terror. She felt the pain on her head and the suffocation of her breath. Just when she thought that she would stay in the dark forever, there were waves of digging in the dark. Then a bright light burst in front of her, followed by the intoxicating fresh air and a warm and soft embrace. In the moment before Juniper's coma, she saw a big man with a gentle face by the light. When she woke up again, she found that she was lying in a white room, surrounded by all kinds of instruments she couldn't understand. Am I in a hospital? Why am I in a hospital? Juniper looked for a long time and finally recognized that the furnishings around her belonged to the hospital. After a while, the door of the room opened from the outside. A familiar face appeared in front of Juniper. Seeing this familiar face made her feel warm. She woke up as soon as Harry entered the ward. He saw that the little girl on the bed looking at him pleasantly. Big brother! Juniper shouts to Harry sweetly, but her voice was very weak, although it has the sweet voice of a little girl. It seems that she just woke up and hasn't recovered. The doctor next to him said, She's lucky to have woken up so quickly after such a serious injury. This doesn't mean she can go free. We have to keep her here and run some more tests. Serious injuries like hers might have immediate effects or only show effects after some time. Harry nodded politely and said, "Thank you, doctor." The doctor waved his hand and said, "It's my job." Then he went to the front and carefully transcribed all kinds of data in the inspection instrument as well as the little girl's physical condition. Harry said happily, "Do you remember me?" When carrying the little girl out of the ruins, Harry remembers that she kept looking at him until she was in a coma. Before she was in a coma, she wanted to shout something about herself. Listening to Harry's inquiry, Juniper hesitated and said, "I can't remember clearly, but I feel very happy when I see you." Harry frowned at the doctor and asked, "What's the situation?" The doctor put down the notebook in his hand and asked cautiously, "Little friend, do you remember your name?" "My name is Juniper." "What are your parents' names and where do you live? Do you remember what happened before you came here?" Maybe the doctor asked too many questions all of a sudden. Juniper's face was confused at first. Later, she held her head in pain and said, I can't remember. I only know my name is Juniper." "Good. Don't worry. The other things will come back in time." Then he motioned Harry to walk out of the ward with him and said, "The child indeed has some amnesia. Now the symptoms don't look very serious, but there are too many lost memories." Harry asked, "Is there any treatment?" The doctor shook his head and said, "There's no effective way. There's only one suggestion. That's to talk to her more and induce her to get back her forgotten memory through conversation." Next to her, June pulled Harry's sleeve hesitantly and said, "Sir, we talked about it before. It's not bad for her to forget her previous memory." Harry nodded slowly and said, "Yes, it's good to forget the painful memories, although she might remember them and wish she had known sooner." The doctor spread out his hand and said, "As a doctor, I can only give a suggestion on this matter. How to do it depends on your own decision." Harry turned his head and looked at the little girl who had been staring at him in the ward. After weighing for a moment, he made a decision. He said, "Now that you've forgotten it, forget it. It's urgent to let her recover first." June nodded in agreement. Although now the little girl has forgotten, so she only remembers her own name. But after all, she will doubt her life experience. Maybe soon she will be able to recall the painful memory a little bit. But that's the future. Harry thinks that he should take a step at a time. At least she won't be affected by the pain during the treatment in the hospital. The doctor looked at the little girl lying alone in the hospital bed and said sympathetically, "I've heard about this child's situation. I lost my parents at such a young age. If it wasn't for Mr. Parker's timely rescue, she'd have suffocated in the ruins. Alas, it's really pitiful." "Yes," Harry sighed. The doctor thought that if the child didn't have any next to kin to take her in, he would have no idea what to do. Then he shook his head and left with a sigh. The doctor's words made Harry think about it and said to June, "Before you said you wanted to adopt this child, I think you still have to find out if she has any relatives." "What do you mean, sir?" said June. Harry said, "I think it's better for her to be with her relatives than with us if she thinks of her life in the future." June nodded and said, "I'll listen to my master's arrangement." Harry nodded and said, "George was taking people to Washington. I'll tell him to look for them." Then he took out his mobile phone and called George. At this time, George and the crew were still on their way to Washington. Considering the traffic and distance, Harry gave George his private plane directly. 500 people of Wolf Guard carrying relief materials went to Washington in several batches. Just after landing the plane, he received a call from Harry. "What can I do for you, sir?" "The name of the little girl I rescued was Juniper. You should inquire about her family in Washington and report to me in time." Yes, I see." Harry also asked, "You're not familiar with Washington on the ground. You can ask Sean Livingston for help when necessary." "I understand." They hang up the phone with George, and Harry calls Sean Livingston again. First, he told him about the current situation of Harvey and then told his subordinates to take it along and asked him to help. Although they are all capable people, they have never set foot in Washington. Not being familiar with the new area was bad enough, but now with all the damage to the roads, it would be even harder to get their bearings. However, with the help of Sean Livingston, it was relatively less difficult. After arranging these things, Harry then pushes the door to enter the ward. Juniper had been waiting for a long time. After Harry came in just now, he just said a word to her and was pulled out by the doctor. There were conversations and phone calls outside. He didn't come in for more than 10 minutes. Even though Juniper was worried, Juniper was still sensible and quiet in bed and didn't make any trouble for others. When Harry finally pushed the door open again, Juniper still called out in a sweet voice, "Big brother." Harry said with a smile, "I ask you a question. Why do you call me Big Brother?" Juniper tilted her head for a moment and said, Well, I don't know. I just remember that my elder brother seemed to have rescued me from a very terrible place, so I felt very happy to see him." Harry knew that the child's memory should have started from the moment he rescued her, and all the memories before that had been forgotten, but she still hasn't forgotten her name. This situation was good and bad. According to the doctor just now, she could still remember her own name, which means that the forgotten memory was not permanent and may be recalled in the future because of an opportunity. But the relatively bad thing was that the memory of the past was too cruel for a 10-year-old child. It's better to forget it all the time. Harry fell into silence. Juniper looked at Harry and was not anxious to speak. It seems that Harry and her side will have a sense of security. It was not until the sound of rumbling in his stomach that Harry was interrupted and regained his mind. Looking up at Juniper, the child was blushing and embarrassed to look at him. Harry said with a smile, "I'm hungry." Juniper was not too shy. She blushed and nodded. "Me too." "Then I'll buy you something to eat," Harry said. June said, "Sir, I better go." Harry nodded and said, "It's okay. Go ahead. She's still weak, and she needs to wake up. She should pay attention to her diet. You should consult the doctor first."